top American climbers have gathered outside the nation's capital, hoping to get themselves one big step closer to possibly representing the United States at the 2020 Summer Olympics. Two of the favorites to do just that. On the women's side, Ashima Sheree comes in with some momentum after winning the 2019 Bouldering Open National Championship in February. And on the men's side, it's Shawn who also won that competition for the men and is your defending Sport Open National Champion. This is the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Shawn Woodland alongside former U.S. national team member Meagan Martin. And this competition today, the two separate ones, they are the last national championships on the USA Climbing schedule, and that means at the end of Saturday we will have a much better idea as to who may represent the United States at the Summer Games in Tokyo.
Exactly. The athletes today are trying to get on that overall national team, which will give them the opportunity to then go to the World Cups this summer and spring and compete and try to get a shot at Tokyo in 2020.
Earlier today we had the speed qualifying. That was an all-out sprint. We now turn our attention to the sport competition, and that is a much more methodical, longer climb up the wall.
Yes, it's definitely endurance-based. Every climber attempts two different routes. The higher they get, the more points they're awarded. Qualifying position is based on rank from each route, and the top 20 climbers will advance to the semifinals.
And from the semifinals, we will take the top 8 to the finals. And Meagan, you mentioned that U.S. national overall team. You got to get on that team in order to possibly get yourself to the Olympics. You earn points based on how well you do in competitions. And right now, the top 4 will earn a spot. Kyra Condi has already clinched a spot. She is your combined invitational national champion. On the men's side, same situation. Top 4 get on the U.S. national team. That's the first big step towards getting to Tokyo. Zach Galla has already clinched, as he is also your 2019 combined invitational national champion. We will have sport qualifying from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia when we return. The 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships is brought to you by The North Face, inspiring and enabling exploration since 1966. Good look at the Lincoln Memorial just outside of Alexandria, Virginia, where we are right now, the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. We are in the middle of qualifying for the sport competition. There are 2 routes for the men, 2 routes for the women, and they will climb each one, and then their combined ranking is what will get them into the semifinals.
Exactly, and these athletes have already done one route, but now they have to do their second one. So if they didn't do well on one, they can hopefully make it up on that second one. And a cool thing about our format today is it is flash format, which means they're all able to watch each other. Whoever went first, there was a video demonstration, so they are not at a disadvantage that way. So it's different from the on-site format that we've seen in some of the other competitions, and that's what we will see in semifinals and finals is the on-site format.
All of these routes are worth different amounts of points. Just keep in mind, the higher you go, the more points you get. Every designated handhold is worth points, and then you get additional points based on how many times you clipped in, and then there are some decimal points that play into the equation that we will get to when we need. But just remember, the higher you go, the more points you score. And we are underway. That is women's route B, and that is Catherine Lamb.
Catherine making her first clip as she starts to become accustomed to getting up further on this route.
She scored 35.09 out of a possible 47.12 points on route A. There are 4 athletes on the wall right now, 2 men and 2 women. The men will be on the left side of your screen, and the women will be on the right. They are climbing the route that they didn't climb on their first run. So all of these athletes making their second run now on the wall.
And you can see kind of the way the wall's angled. Those middle routes are a little steeper, so they're going to be a little more powerful because the angle is a bit steeper, whereas the other ones are at more of a vertical angle, therefore a bit more technical.
So Justin Weiss just come off the wall, so his run is done. Once you fall, you're done. You cannot get back on. Ashley Fisher scored 29.06 out of a possible 48.12 points on Route B, and she is right now on women's Route A.
She's approaching one of the cruxes or more difficult sections of this route. It's going to be right after she clips this, getting into that next volume. That big black geometric shape that you see is what we call a volume. And the whole next section between the next two clips is where it starts to get a little bit spicier.
Right now she's about a third of the way up the route. They have 6 total minutes to get themselves to the top.
And they have to clip every clip. They are awarded points for the clips, but it's also a safety precaution. So if you skip a clip, you will be told to come down. And the way we measure that is if you are above the quick draw and your foot passes that lower carabiner, you have to come down. You can down climb and clip, which is a nice option, but extra time to.
Tristan Chen, meanwhile, was one of the first men on Route A. He just fell on his attempt. As Ashley Fisher on the left of your screen and Catherine Lamb are still making their ascents.
The route that Ashley Fisher is on has been topped by Ashima Sireesha, whereas the yellow route Catherine Lamb is on has yet to be topped, and she's still a bit a ways away from the high point.
She's about 31 feet up. It's a total of about 62 feet to the top. So halfway right now, really, for Catherine Lamb. She's on the, you can see her foot right on the bottom right of your screen. And Ashley Fisher continuing to work her way up. She's more than halfway now of Route A. About 2.5 minutes left for both of the women here.
Ashley, on one of the more difficult moves, isn't able to get all the way up and over to grab that crimp hold, which is a very small hold that has a dual textured surface on it, so only part of it has friction.
Fisher's climb coming to an end as she slips here.
Tried to get the power here, wasn't quite able to get up there. Looks like she did hit the hold. It'll be up to the judge whether or not she gets usable surface, which is that 0.3 in addition to whatever hold she actually controlled.
That's where the decimal places come in. As you see Catherine Lamb get off the wall, you get 0.3 for making forward momentum, and then you get 0.5 for actually getting the usable surface. So they will add that to however many designated handholds that she passed, and then you get 0.01 for every time you clip. Remember, the key is the higher you go, the more points you're going to receive. That's a look at Griffin Duval, who on Route A scored 22.56 out of a possible 46.13 points.
This route is kind of on you the whole entire way, setting up for one of the power moves. There is what we call a blocker on the hold that he was trying to grab, where there is a hold that you're supposed to grab, but it's semi-blocked by another hold, so you have to really aim as well as you can, and that's a move that we like to call a dead point.
Griffin Duval was unable to complete that movement, and his climb is done. Luke Muring, number 128, is on men's Route A.
He did really well in the speed earlier. Definitely his better of the disciplines, but also a good sport climber. Trying to make his way through this technical section, taking the proper rest when needed. Though these walls are very tall, so you can't take too much time, because 60 feet of climbing is kind of a lot to do in 6 minutes.
Veering in the beginning parts of his ascent. Has clipped in now 5 times, so that will be 0.05 added to his score and counting.
Subtle movements here on the volume. Though it is large, the angle where your feet are has got a little bit of a drop off, so you really have to be careful on how you're placing your feet, especially when you're grabbing these holds that, I mean, you can't even really see the holds when he's grabbing them because they are so small.
Muring trying to negotiate his way through this crux. 4 people will be on the wall at once, and they are all on their separate clocks. So once someone falls, someone will go. As they try to keep things moving here. And this is the second run for all of these athletes. They make 2 runs, 1 on each route. And then depending on how well they do in both of them, that determines their ranking. And we will take the top 20 to the second round, the semifinals. And then from there, the top 8 move on to the finals as we look at Quinn Mason.
She was just pulling up the rope there, trying to clip off of her left hand, and she had to drop it for a second. So sometimes you can't find the proper position right away, and it's better just to drop the rope and then maneuver around to make sure you're at the optimal clipping stance.
All right, this is a quick announcement to all competitors.
Mason continuing her climb. You saw her score on Route A was 35.06 points out of a possible 47.12.
Please keep your eye on running order.
Made her way nicely through that press section, which in a competition can be a little nerve-wracking to do moves like that. They might not be the most difficult, but because they are kind of committing technical movements, it's hard to sometimes be able to find the right way to go for it, but not overdo it and possibly make a mistake. So she did that nicely.
Alex Plotnikoff is the other woman currently on the wall. She's on female Route A. She's on in the gray, the right side of your screen, just reaching up towards that volume. And now back to Luke Mearing. Mearing is making some really good progress here.
He's getting a lot closer to where the high point is. This route has also not been topped. Just the blue men's route has been topped. So the higher up he can get here, he's approaching a pretty subtle movement.
And the pink tape around that volume at the top, that is where he needs to get in order to top this route and receive a perfect score of 46.13 points. Meanwhile, on the far side, Quinn Mason has come off the wall.
Trying to hold on there.
And Mearing can't quite do it, but a pretty solid run up Route A.
Jesse Grouper.
It's Ben Linfors,
I'm just
who's
wrong, sorry.
in the purple top. And next to him is Alex Plotnikoff.
Looking like she's getting a little pumped there. You see her elbows were coming out a little bit.
And Linfors is now starting to reach one of the cruxes of this route. We've seen some men really struggle with this portion of the route.
He does have a good little rest there. It's not too much of a rest that you can milk, but knowing that multiple people have topped this, you're going to see the men fight a little bit more just because they know what's possible, and depending on how they did on the first one, they really might need to do well here.
Then he will come off the wall. So Linfors is done, but you saw him reach towards usable surface, so he may get an additional 0.5 added to his score, and then you will add up all the clips, and those are 0.01 each, and that's how the judges will determine his final tally on that route.
Alex Plotnikoff approaching one of the last better holds for about 6 moves. She may rest here for a little bit. The next few movements are really the major crux. Only a few women have gotten past it. Though this route has been topped, a lot of the women have only gotten about 6 moves further than she is right now. So she definitely needs to save up a bit of energy to make it through these next few powerful movements.
Plotnikoff more than halfway up on Route A and hanging in there.
Trying to figure out how she can get up there. Needs to get her left hand up where her right hand is to be able to make it to that next volume.
22.05 on Route B out of a possible 48.12 points. So really needs to have a strong showing here if she wants a chance to make it into the top 20. And as she reaches for that hold, she is off the wall. We're early on here in the qualifying round for the sport competition. We'll have more when we return to Alexandria, Virginia. Sport qualifying continues here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, as all these athletes looking to make it into the top 20 athletes who advance to the semifinal round. This is the second run for all of these climbers. And that's Daniel Seo. He is on men's route A. 25.37 points out of a possible 50.12. So we got about halfway up on route B before he fell, and now he's off the wall on route A.
Wasn't able to make it through one of the earlier cruxes. There's still a couple more on that route.
That's Gabriel Laurent on men's route B.
It's one of the last sections on this route where you can kind of get a shake for a bit.
He only scored 9.02 points on his first climb up route A out of a possible 46.13, so he really has some work to do here.
Definitely taking every precaution to make sure he gives himself the best chance. Though being on a good hold, getting a chance to shake is helpful, but you still need to make sure with walls that are this tall that you keep moving in a timely fashion, just so you don't tire yourself out even if you're trying to recover. Looking a little perplexed there, trying to figure out the sequence.
The women on the wall right now, on the left, it's Jenny Zhang, and on the right, it's Audrey Garich. She's on female route B. Zhang with a nice move to hang on. Meanwhile, Gabriel Laurent has come off the wall on men's route B.
The women are able, or all of the competitors are able to watch each other on these routes, so they can choose how much they want to watch, how much time they want to warm up. They have a set time of when they're going to climb. Well, not a set time. They know who they're climbing after, so they just have to time manage themselves in order to see how much they want to learn about the route. And some people watch less than others do just because maybe it works better for them. But you can definitely have the chance to watch people climb and then watch the video, just so you know what you need to do.
Zhang on the left, Garich is on the right. Garich is just about a third of the way, maybe close to halfway up now. Getting about 62 feet to the top on these routes.
Audrey looking really calm here as she gets through one of the punchier sections. Needs to move quicker here than she did on the other part because the wall did just get a little steeper.
Zhang on the left going to the chalk bag to try to help her grip a little bit. And this is where we've seen some women get hung up. Garich is off the wall meanwhile.
Jenny Zhang also just fell at that first real crux on women's route A.
And we've seen that really slow some of the climbers down, and we've had some problems with that portion of the route. Over to men's route A, where we find Nolani Lifwinsella. 17.35 out of a possible 50.12 points on route B. So he's in the same situation as a lot of climbers here early on in the second round. They need to have a very solid placing in this second run in order to have a chance to get into the top 20 athletes who will advance to the semifinals. And remember, you earn points for the U.S. team overall national standings based on how well you do in these events, where you place. The higher you place, the more points you get.
Where his left hand is, that's a pocket hold, and it looks like it's going to be kind of deeper and a little bit more of a juggier hold, but the route setters actually blocked it with a small foothold, so they're only able to use a partial part of that hold, which is why that whole section right there looks so precarious. It's all bad holds, and they're trying to get to where Noelani is right now, to then kind of regroup a little bit on some better holds before they get into the more difficult footwork section.
So Lifwinsella trying to navigate his way through this crux.
that stemming position he's in right now is a great way to kind of rest your arms a little bit, though the feet are kind of bad, so you have to be careful not to move too much. So it's kind of like a tense rest. It only helps so much.
He's able to keep himself on the wall and now methodically moving up and clipping in for another .01 added to his score. Measuring his next few steps here as he is content just to hang out for a little bit.
It is necessary to rest so you can recover. Sometimes when you get on the wall, you overgrip a little, so you can pump your muscles out a little too quickly. So if you have a chance, like he has right now, you can kind of reset, breathe, and get the blood flowing a little bit better. And he knows he's coming up on that steeper angle, so he needs more energy.
So look at Ethan Hunt, who is on men's route B. Meanwhile, for the women, Gabriel Tortolot is off the wall on route A. Litwinsella.
Nice clip there by Ethan, trying to pull through to that next fin hold.
He's on the right of your screen, Litwinsella's on the left.
Definitely getting a little pumped here, just trying to keep moving as much as he can. Every move and hold counts.
And Ethan Hunt can't make it, and Litwinsella's off the wall as well. And meanwhile, it is Emma Grace Lehman who's come off the wall. We'll have more from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia after this. We're in the middle of determining who will be the 20 climbers to move on to the semifinals of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport Open National Championship, and that is Michaela Kirsch on women's route A, 40.09 out of a possible 48.12 points on route B. So a solid showing for her on her first run. If she can follow that up with another good performance here, she could lock up a spot in the top 20 and move on to the semifinals.
Michaela is definitely one of the more seasoned competitors and a phenomenal sport climber. So we're expecting to see her climb really well here today. She was just taking a second there to rest in one of the better places to rest on this route, because there aren't really that many after that one. So she's really good at finding exactly where she needs to slow down and when she needs to move quicker.
Kirsch about a third of the way up this route right now. And this is now the first real crux that she's running into. This is where we've seen a lot of women start to struggle and fall off the wall.
Yeah, this is kind of the part where it starts and then it kind of just keeps building from there. You can go through this section a little smoother, some women have, but if you don't, it can make the following section even more difficult. So it's important to be smart here. And you're about halfway up the wall at this point, so you're just getting more and more tired.
This is where the real work begins for Michaela Kirsch as she continues to shake out her hands.
She's grabbing onto that rectangular hold that isn't terrible, but it's kind of a sloper, so a little more difficult to grab. There's nothing in cut on it. She gets into the smaller holds and is going to prepare to clip, and then the next hold is a fin, which turned the opposite way is a jug, but in this position it's not as good of a hold as it is in a different orientation.
Kirsch doing a good job of negotiating her way through this crux and is past the halfway point here on route A.
And this is where it's about to get a little more intense. She's going to need to move quickly through these smaller holds with no real relief until she gets to the Waco that's about 5 holds above her. Which she knows because she's watched other people, so she's prepping herself for this section.
And continues to do a very good job of alternating her grip and making sure she's shaking out her hands just to save as much energy as possible.
Really nicely done getting to that crimp, staying close to the wall.
Now going for yet another clip to add another .01 to her score. There's about 2 minutes left. The athletes get 6 minutes to climb these routes. If they don't get the top before the clock runs out, their run is obviously finished. Kirsch trying to get to the top of this route inside of that 6-minute window, and getting to the last portion once she clears these volumes.
Trying to set up for that Waco move, able to stick it. Good place for her to take another shake before she sets up for this powerful pinchy section. The next holds are what we call pinches. They're open hand, and there's just squeezing involved. So there's more contact with your whole hand, which pumps out the muscles faster. So this at the end of the route is a lot more difficult.
The green tape at the upper left part of your screen that surrounds that volume, that signifies the top of this route. That's where she is trying to get. And Kirsch doing a good job so far of methodically working her way up the wall, and has a minute left to get to the top.
She took a second earlier to kind of look down and see the clock, or attempt to see the clock. Each route has its own clock because the climbers are starting at different times, so she knows she has to move.
Kirsch continues to inch her way up and just cannot make it, but given what she did on her first run earlier, that should be good enough to get her inside the top 20. So solid effort for Michaela Kirsch.
She had a really good rhythm. This is one of those blocker holds I was talking about earlier. She hit it but didn't get deep enough in it because you have to aim in between the two holds, and she just kind of missed it a little bit, pulling her off of the wall. But really good climbing there from Michaela Kirsch.
Martin Keenel, number 87 on the right of your screen, is on men's route B.
Has a nice knee bar there with his left leg, keeping him sucked into the wall a little bit more, taking a little bit of pressure off of his arms for a second.
29.08 points on his first run out of a possible 46.13. Keenel getting to that volume that signifies kind of the beginning of one of the biggest cruxes on this route.
Exactly. If he can get to that next hold, he can kind of feel a little more comfortable, but only for a second. But right now he's in a pretty precarious situation because he needs to kind of move out of that, but he's definitely already getting a little bit pumped.
He's about a little more than halfway through here.
Gets a good shake for a second, kind of reset. There is a pocket hold that you can see, and that is what he's trying to get to because it is a better hold where he can actually recover, so he's going to move as quick as he can to hopefully make his way up to that hold. Doing a good job of staying calm and getting there.
And this next volume, that horizontal one, has really presented some problems for a lot of the climbers as well.
Totally. It's a very interesting sequence they have here with all these volumes.
And right on cue, Keenel is off the wall.
Good climbing from him there, though.
Keenel will wait and see if what he has done is good enough to get him into the top 20 and onto the semifinals. Over on men's route A is Solomon Barth.
Solomon's in that position where you're still kind of on your feet, and your feet and your hands holds are not too bad, so you can kind of take a moment before getting into that steeper angle to reset and get a little bit of a recovery back there for you.
41.39 on his run-up route B out of a possible 50.12 points, so a really solid effort for him to start. He can get maybe 3/4 of the way up here. Should put himself in good position for a trip to the semifinals.
And Solomon's been in many sport climbing national finals, so it's a position where he's trying to get to the final because he knows he's capable, because he is a very good sport climber and has done well in the past. So he's able to stay calm and reassess what's happening and just hopefully execute the way he wants to.
Remember, every designated handhold on the route is a point or 2 points, depending on if you have to put both hands on. The higher you get, the more points you scored. And there are some partial points involved when it comes to how many clips that you've clipped into.
Let's go, Solomon. Come
And then
on.
if you do not make it to the top, what you did on your highest point, if you got positive momentum to the next hold, or if you were actually able to touch usable surface, you get additional points for that as well.
Solomon has a really nice rhythm. He's at one of the other possible rest points on this route. It's a good hold he's grabbing, and he's about to get into a more technical balancy section, which after watching all the other climbers, he knows that's what's coming up, so he just needs to prepare his body to be in the best place to handle that.
Solomon Barth needs to reach the pink tape at the top there at the screen. That's what he's shooting for. Again, that's 62 feet in the air.
This move out left that he's setting up to do, he's going to be going to a pretty bad pinch hold, and then he's going to have to flip his right hand in order to not lose balance. Does that really nicely.
So Barth eyeing that next hand hold.
Trying to get a hold with a close grip on that crimp hold. Haven't seen this route topped yet, so he's looking to be the first if he can get his way up there.
He has clipped himself in, and he is getting closer, and then his hand will slip, so he will probably get an additional 0.5 added to his score for getting a touch on some usable surface. One more look at it.
Definitely should get some usable surface. Obviously, it's always up to the judge, but he definitely had a hand on it there. That section, the route is really not over until you clip. After talking to the head route setter, or the chief route setter of this competition, Ryan Sewell, he was telling me that even when you have both hands on the finish, you could possibly get tired clipping because it's such a difficult finishing move. The holds that they have on the finishing hold are not good.
That's Lauren Bear. On B, scored 31.57 out of a possible 48.12 points. And now on Route A.
Starting to get to some of the more difficult climbing on this route, taking a moment to rest. You're seeing a lot of people rest in the same places because they know they only have so many spots where they can hopefully recover, and they need to save enough energy to get through those more difficult sections.
Lauren Bear approaching the halfway point. And again, the crux of this route that has given a lot of women problems.
Setting up for a bigger move. It's not too difficult, but it's just difficult enough after that much climbing to where you need to make sure you're recovered enough to get to that hold. Nicely onto that smaller crimp so she can clip.
And there's the clip for an additional 0.01 points. Doing a very good job of navigating through this trouble area on this route, where again we've seen a lot of women, we've seen their ascents come to an end on this portion.
The route setters did a really good job of kind of perfectly tiring them out before what's about to be the most difficult section, where only a few women have actually gotten through. Just taxing open hand movements right before you have to punch it on some smaller crimp holds. She's using her calf actually rather than her heel. Most of the women have been heel hooking there, but I mean, you can use whatever you want. Sometimes your knee is helpful.
At this point, whatever keeps you on the wall. And you took a look at these routes yesterday, and the first thing you said to me was, they're really hard.
Yes. Comparatively to a lot of the national sport climbing competitions in the past, these are much harder qualification routes than what I've seen in the past, but it's necessary. So much more is at stake with the Olympics, and we need to make sure that we get the best people on that team. So I think they did a great job.
74 women are in the field, and we will only take 20 to the semifinals. And from there, only 8 will move on to the finals. And again, you get points based on your placement overall in these events, as Bear is now off the wall, and those points go towards getting you on the U.S. overall national team. So Bear's run comes to an end. We'll be back with more qualifying from the sport competition in Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome back to the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, as the qualifying round for the 2019 USA Climbing Sport Open National Championship continues, and that is Natalia Grossman, who on Route A had a total of 35.39 out of a possible 47.12 points. And Natalia is very much alive for a spot in the top 4 in the overall standings, and a trip to the world competitions with the United States overall national team. These were the standings coming into the competition. Grossman is also competing in the speed competition, and because of what she did there, she was actually able to gain some points, and unofficially is now in 5th place.
Making her way through that technical section very nicely, and now getting into the power section on this route. We still haven't seen a top on this route. And she needs to get to this next hold in order to kind of have a moment where she can relax a little bit more. Those big yellow pinches are quite difficult to hold and very powerful, so they zap so much energy. And so she's made it to that, really I think it's like the last rest kind of before the end. So there's still a lot of climbing, and you don't really have much of a rest there.
She's about 2/3 of the way through now.
She's getting close to the high point as well. Seen a couple girls here, but the high point's a little bit higher, just a few holds higher. Really fighting to keep it together on these pinches. Needs to figure out if she can clip.
Grossman will be keeping a close eye on Margot Hayes. Hayes is the woman who currently sits in 4th place overall in the U.S. national team standings. And she'll be going a little bit later on Route A, as Grossman is off the wall on Route B, and hoping that she will have accomplished enough to get herself into the semifinals.
Kind of got stuck up in that section there with that Gaston with her left hand on the pinch, trying to figure out how she could match that hold and get out. Wasn't able to, but she should get positive movement there, so that extra 0.3 because she moved her body forward as she was falling. And I believe that she's now tied with the high point, if not just right below it, because that is the section that we've seen people fall in.
Great effort from Grossman, although she does not get to the top of the route. And now over to Ali Nishi. She's on female Route A. Nishi, a Pan American champion, trying to navigate her way through one of the big cruxes of this route. Gets the clip. That'll be 0.01 added to her score.
Making it through that section pretty quickly, trying to conserve that energy before the more difficult climbing. Like you were saying, Shawn, she is a Pan American champion on the youth side. A little newer to the open competition, but clearly very seasoned in competition climbing and excited to be on this open stage. She needs to get her left hand there. We've seen a lot of women try to go with their right hand because they can kind of reach it, but then they're out of sequence, actually. So
that's exactly what happens there. As Ali Nishi, would have been nice if you could have talked to her right there, given her a little bit of advice. May have helped, but she's off the wall.
It's a really nice position there where you can like rock up and go to your right hand with your right hand. But unfortunately, unless you're go-go gadget arms. You can't go with your right hand again. So a lot of the women, when they're getting tired, they're just going with their right hand because it's right there. But in reality, there's no way of moving past that without going with your left, as we just saw Alinishi do.
Still plenty of more qualifying to come. We're going to step aside. We'll be back with more from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Back at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, as qualifying continues for the men and the women who are vying for a spot in the semifinals of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport Open National Championship. There are 92 men and 74 women, and the top 20 will move on. That's Dean Katsaro. He's over on men's route A. 20.55 out of a possible 50.12 points on his earlier run.
Nicely getting into that first section where you can kind of take a breather on this route. Seen many of the men take a moment here before getting into that technical footwork section. Still yet to have this route topped, though we haven't seen the only man who's topped a route on it yet. Mr. Shawn Bailey has not climbed his second one yet. Dean nicely making his way through, getting closer to that position where he can kind of stand on top of that volume and take another breather.
Katsaro going for another clip. Gets to that easily and out of the chalk bag to help his grip out a little bit, as I'm sure he is starting to feel a little bit of fatigue in his arms. Shaking out his right hand momentarily. And this is where it's a physical battle, obviously, but at the same time, mentally, you're thinking through things as well. How tough is it when you start to fatigue to kind of keep a clear head about this?
So you hope that you've kind of ran yourself through the route enough times where you kind of know what's happening. But definitely you have to think about what you're gonna do next while you sit there and make sure parts of your body are tense enough to keep you on the wall as you're trying to rest other parts of your body and plan for what's ahead. So there's a lot of multitasking going on here. I like to break the routes up in sections, so you have these moments where you're going faster and slower, and right now Dean's at a moment where he's going slower, and he's gonna go fast through that next section until he gets to that big pinch, which is the next place where he can kind of rest, because you can't hesitate on those other sections where you need to move quickly, otherwise you'll be off the wall.
Katsaro's on the far left of your screen. On the right is Kyra Condi.
Nicely making her way to clip right here off of that volume, getting ready to come into the press move.
Condi with 42.10 points on Route A out of a possible 47.12, so she was very close to the top.
Kind of was fighting with the rope there. It looked like it was in her way a little bit as she was trying to get her foot on the volume, but able to maneuver through it nicely.
Dean Katsaro, who we were watching earlier, just fell off the wall. As Condi, again, is playing with house money. She is the 2019 combined invitational champion, and that individual automatically earns a spot on the U.S. overall national team. So 3 spots still up for grabs on that squad.
Making her way to that next rest section. You'll see some climbers rest longer than others, just depending on their endurance level. Kyra's looking a little more fatigued, so she's just trying to find the place in which she can feel comfortable resting, but she is choosing to rest a little less, probably just because she's tired and knows that she needs to keep moving. It'd be beneficial to clip here. Struggling. Oh.
Just really starting to lose her grip.
Looks like she got a little bit of a handle on it there. I think, yep, I was gonna say, I think she's gonna go for the moves over the clip here, just because she got a little too tired, but.
The usable space rule, 0.5, obviously worth more than clipping in, and because of what she did on her first run, Kyra Condi in solid position for a spot in the top 20.
Definitely in a solid position, and I believe she did grab that hold earlier and then come back down. We'll have to go to the judges for that, but still up there, close to the high point. So in a nice position to hopefully make it into the semifinals tomorrow.
Condi now checking with her judge to see officially what she was given.
Lauren Berry on women's route A, working her way through the small crimp semi-powerful section, getting ready to approach that pretty good hold where we've seen a lot of the women rest before they go through that next punchy section, before the even more difficult punchy section. It just kind of builds this entire route.
The route setters did a very nice job of setting this up so that things certainly do not get easier for you the higher you go, and you are fatigued at some points to make more difficult moves. And like you said, we want the best athletes moving forward, and now Berry is off the wall as she slips, making that move to the next handhold.
John Brock taking a moment.
And John Brock with a 41.10 score on route B out of a possible 50.12 points. So that was a solid performance from him on his opening run. If he can match that here, it's a very good chance he winds up in the semifinals. 92 men in the field, and we're only taking 20 to the next round.
He is one of our taller climbers. As you can see, his body's a little more bunched up in this section than we've seen some of the other men. Just so he's having to be a little more careful with where he's placing his feet, because he could be a little more off balance being that bunched up, but made it through there very nicely.
The other man on the wall with Brock is Samuel Woods. As he gets to that next volume, and now we'll go for the clip.
He's approaching that more powerful section on this route too. There's been some men that get a knee bar once they get to this next blue hold. They can kind of wedge their left knee in if they're able to. Good recovery there. He didn't get the best part of the hold right away, but was able to hang on long enough to bump up further on the hold. Definitely becoming a little more fatigued. As you see, his head was going back a bit, unable to make it through.
Samuel Woods' run comes to an end, leaving John Brock the only man on the wall currently. Brock continues to work his way up route A.
Getting really close to that section where the holds get a little bit better. Just needs to fight through this move on the pocket, and then one more crimp move, and then he'll be at that bigger pinch hold where he can relax a little. Nicely done there. It is open hand, so it's gonna zap your energy a bit more, but at least it is a good hold.
Brock shooting for that volume that is outlined in the pink tape at the top of your screen. We have yet to see this route get topped by any climber.
Getting ready for that more technical and tensiony section. A lot of body tension needed to stay on the wall here. That flip, nicely done.
Whether Brock tops this or not, he is doing himself a huge favor as far as getting into the semifinals.
Definitely in a good position right now. Oh, just loses it on the crimp there, but very nice climbing.
John Brock doesn't get to the top, but very likely we will see him in the semifinals. That's Claire Burfine, 35.59 on route A out of a possible 47.12 points. So she's looking good as far as a spot in the top 20 is concerned. And Burfine, coming into this event, was in 5th place in the U.S. overall team national standings, but has dropped to 6th unofficially after the speed qualifying. She has some ground to make up here.
She does, but she is the defending national sport climbing champion. She did look a little uncomfortable in that lower section. She is one of our taller competitors, so it looked a little bit bunchy for her height, but this next section shouldn't be like that it's a little more spread out. So as long as she didn't panic too much down there and has conserved her energy enough, she should be able to get through this section. She's definitely a seasoned competitor and a very talented sport climber. And she's usually on the podium at this competition.
Earlier in the day, Burfine finished 17th in the speed competition.
Not her best speed day, because she also won speed last year at this competition, so.
And that finish earns her 36 points in the overall standings. If you win a competition, you get a whopping 200 points. So if she can duplicate her performance from last year, those would be 200 valuable points in the battle to get herself onto the U.S. overall national team.
Able to get to that hold where you can rest a little bit more than on the others, choosing not to. Just gonna keep moving. Every hold counts. Really nice flip there. She's definitely fighting here.
Burfine just slips, cannot win that fight with the grip, but a very nice job from Claire Burfine as she looks to work her way into the semifinals. More qualifying coming up from Alexandria, Virginia. The 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships are brought to you by The North Face, inspiring and enabling exploration since 1966. Qualifying for the sport competition continues here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, and that's your defending sport champion, Shawn Bailey, who's getting set to climb Route A. He topped Route B on his first run. He's 22 years old, out of San Diego, California, and also won the 2019 USA Climbing Bouldering Open National Championship. That was held in Bend, Oregon back in February. So this kid looking really good as far as a spot on the U.S. overall national team is concerned. The next big step towards getting himself to the Olympics in 2020.
Yeah, really good season so far for Shawn Bailey, and this discipline is his best discipline. It's really where he's a bit more untouchable. He was the national champion last year in sport climbing, and definitely capable of bringing home another win.
And as far as the national team overall standings are concerned, he came into this weekend in third place with 395 total points and has about a 200-point margin on fifth place Matt Fultz. So he is solidly in the top four right now.
He's just preparing to get back, or to get on the wall for his second time today. Just taking a quick look at the route before he got on, and then he's ran it through his head enough times that he knows what he's doing. And Shawn's one of those climbers that really knows how to sport climb well, and the way he intuitively climbs while he's on a route is something that not everybody can do, and that's what really separates him from everybody else.
His score of 50.12 is a perfect score on Route B as he got to the top, and trying to duplicate that performance here on Route A and move on to the semifinals.
The beginning of this route is very technical and not really comfortable. You're kind of just uncomfortable until you get to that orange hold. The pocket that he's grabbing right now looks like it could be good, but there is another hold inside of it, making it barely a full pad. Oh no.
Now he just lost his resin bag.
His chalk just fell out of his bag. So hopefully there's enough. He should have loose chalk in there too, but definitely not ideal. And you know, mental is so important. So he just needs to forget about it and stay focused on what he needs to do.
And that rosin bag, the same thing that you might see a lot of major league pitchers use on the mound. That just came tumbling out of his chalk bag. But like you said, Megan, there should be some bits of that in there that he could use to his advantage.
Exactly. And if anyone can deal with obstacles like that, it's Shawn Bailey. So it doesn't seem to be giving him too much trouble as he gets into that section where you can kind of rest there on your feet for a little bit before getting into that steeper section of the route. making his way onto that smaller crimp on the volume. He is not on the tall side, really. He's more in the middle, if not on the lower end. So he had to kind of press up into that volume with his hand before getting to the orange crimp on the volume. Seen some of the taller competitors do it a little differently. It's one of the cooler things in climbing, how you see different body types approach the same climbs.
And we saw him do similar things in the bouldering, the Open National Championship, where he was perfect in the finals, flashing every single problem in the finals. That means just getting to the top on your very first try. So he knows how to navigate his way through these precarious situations.
And he's really good at figuring out what he needs to do on the fly for him. And that's just something that is intuitive for him. Almost falling out of that pocket, he kind of hit it, wasn't able to dead point as accurately as he would have wanted to, but able to save it. And getting close to that better pinch hold where you can kind of take a little rest before approaching basically the rest of the route is a crux. There really isn't a time that lets up so much after this.
Ellery Osborne is the woman at the top of your screen. She is on women's Route A, and Shawn Bailey, meanwhile, trying to become the first man to top men's Route A. He already did it earlier in the day on Route B and trying to go 2 for 2 in this qualifying round and get himself into the semifinals.
Setting up for this tensiony move. Trying to get his feet to stay so he can reach out there. And then he needs to flip his hand. Done with ease.
"62 feet high. That's where that volume with the pink tape around it is located.
Still looking quite casual, more casual than anyone else has been in this position. So setting up nicely. Gonna need to get both his hands over there before he can go out to the last hold. That is again blocked by another hold on top. So there's only so much you can get your hand on there, making it even more difficult. They're just making a difficult hold even more difficult, just really trying to separate these men in such a strong field.
Bailey looking to go 2 for 2. Has his hand on that final volume. Now he just needs to complete the clip. That's to his right. And he's gonna make it. So Shawn Bailey tops Route A, and your defending national sport champion picking up right where he left off. And he will be in the semifinals as he looks to defend his title and, more importantly, get himself on to the U.S. overall national team.
Now that Shawn has been able to top both the routes, the rest of the competitors know what they're up against. They know that it's going to take a lot to be competitive with him. And I'm sure a lot of people are ready to really go for it in the semifinals and finals. But Shawn Bailey's going to be a hard one to catch.
Hard to catch in the U.S. national team overall standings. Again, he came in third place overall with a solid hold on that. And what he's doing here in Alexandria is just going to give him basically a stranglehold on one of those spots in the top 4. So Shawn Bailey, 2 for 2 in qualifying. We'll be back with more from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Day 1 of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships continues here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. We are in the second round of qualifying in the sport competition for both the men and the women. All these climbers making their second attempts on the route they did not climb earlier in the day. Your combined ranking is what determines whether or not you get into the top 20 and then on to the semifinals. Joe Diaz is on the left and Sammy Singleton is on the right. Diaz is on men's Route B and Singleton on female Route A.
Sammy was just taking a second there to rest before this somewhat powerful section where there isn't as much rest. Joe looking pretty smooth as he approaches one of his final rests for a couple moves. Oh, isn't able to get all the way in there.
He made it about halfway up Route A, and about the same result on Route B. Now the question is, will that be good enough to advance him in this competition?
Sammy trying to quickly get through here so she can get to those next 2 holds are a little bit better than where she is now. Fighting to get up there on that hold a little bit more.
Singleton on Route B, more than 27 points out of a possible 48.12. And that's the area where we've seen so many women struggle, and Singleton falls victim to it as well, as she is now off the wall.
Lots of fight there from Sammy, trying to hold on with everything she could to keep going, but that part is where it gets pretty difficult.
Marco Giacomangeli is on the left of your screen, and now he is off. And that leaves Emma Hunt as the only climber on the wall right now.
Nicely pressing through, getting her foot up there, working her way to some better holds for a second before she has to punch through that more powerful section.
28.57 out of a possible 47.12 on Route A.
It's important to move quick here, which she clearly knows, as she's moving a lot faster than we saw her before. Had to go twice to that blocked crimp hold. Nice clipping stance there.
She is more than halfway up the route now. And her right hand slips off, and Emma Hunt is done with Route B. So Stefan Fellner, now the only climber on the wall. He's in that bright green shirt on the left of your screen. And he is in the opening stages of his ascent.
Kind of needs to move through this section efficiently with every placement counting, just because it's easy to kind of go off balance. Gonna get that nice knee bar there.
35.6 points out of a possible 46.13 earlier in the day on Route A.
Taking a little bit of the stress off of his arms so he can shake and breathe for a second. Using his knee to suck him into the wall. And that's a really nice knee barring hold because it's not sharp at all. It kind of just is perfect to slot your knee in there, as we've seen a lot of the men do.
Fellner going for another clip as he reaches across his body to grab his line.
It's kind of a technical part, but the next hold that he's going to go to is going to be a little bit better, which is a nice place to rest again if he feels like he needs to. This bigger hold that he just got to before the kind of power endurance section. That was a little off balance, where we've seen a lot of men struggle.
Grace DiGiorgio is in the upper right hand part of your screen, as we once again have 4 climbers on the wall. Fellner continuing to hang on and making good progress up Route B, as next to him, Grace DiGiorgio is off the wall.
Really nice flow that Stefan has right now. You see he's going a little bit faster than he was before because he knows it's important for him to conserve as much energy as he can. Going for another knee bar, which a few of the men have done here.
Ezra David is now on the left of your screen in the black shirt. He's on Route A. Remember, 6 minutes in which to get to the top. And all of these athletes are on separate clocks.
Really nice use of the rest here for Stefan Fellner. This anytime you can use your knee as a knee bar, it really releases a lot more of the stress off your arms. You see a lot of the climbers shaking as they're climbing, but it's hard to recover when you're still hanging so much on your arms. So when you can find a knee bar like that and you can make it work for you, definitely helps to conserve your energy. And this is that section that gets a little more difficult. Some uncomfortable movements.
Fellner still the only man on the wall as Ezra David just came off.
Gonna clip again from that position. Really smart and efficient. Needs to make sure he hits that properly, able to do so. Getting really close to that next section where he can rest again. In about 4 holds, there's a pocket that if he can get there, is another good place where he can take a moment to breathe.
Secures that hold with his right hand and now has his left hand in place. And Fellner, if he can get past this, things are not going to get any easier, as he has about 20 feet left to go, and his climb will come to an end. About halfway through the field here of this qualifying round of the Sport Championship. We'll be back with more after this. Hashima Sireesha getting set for her second qualifying run as we return to the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Shawn Woodland alongside former U.S. national team member Meagan Martin, and Hashima Sireesha earlier in the day topped Route A, 47.12 points for a perfect score. And no reason to expect that she cannot do the same here on Route B.
It's been really nice to see Ashima back in this kind of form. She had a shoulder injury last year, so she actually wasn't even able to compete in this competition due to trying to heal that. And since the combined invitational, it seemed that she's definitely back from that injury and back to her normal self, being the only woman who topped Route A.
And Alex Johnson, meanwhile, is in the black sleeveless shirt, upper left-hand portion of your screen, as she is on female Route A. And we talked about how dominant Shawn Bailey was at the Bouldering Open National Championship, and Hashima Sireesha was in that category as well. I mean, she looked like she was in a league of her own at that competition.
Yeah, she had a really good Bouldering Nationals, and it was her first time winning that competition. She's won it as a youth many times, but never as an adult until this year. So she's definitely in good form, and it's, you know, a great time to be in that form considering what's coming up.
And Alex Johnson, meanwhile, has fallen off the wall. And Sireesha, as far as the U.S. overall national team is concerned, came into this weekend in second place. Remember, the top 4 women in those overall standings advance to the U.S. overall national team, and that is a huge step as far as possibly earning a trip to the 2020 Summer Games is concerned.
Nicely making her way through that technical section. Now onto the more powerful portion of the route before the last rest, which she looks extremely casual here.
And the thing I notice about her when I watch her in bouldering is that she seems just so precise every time she moves.
She does have a precision to her climbing and a lot of flexibility, which is also to her advantage in terms of her climbing style. She's really good with movement. Sport climbing, though, is definitely where she is most comfortable, as you can see, as a lot of the moves that have been giving a lot of women trouble, she's just flying through with not even a second thought.
Sireesha well past the halfway point here. She has already topped Route A and well on her way to the semifinals as the top 20 women move on to the next round. 74 are in the field right now. And she's about halfway in to her 6-minute time frame. So still plenty of time for her to go 2 for 2 in the qualifying round and top Route B.
And she chose not to rest on that ball where her foot is now, but not because she's tired, or at least it doesn't look like she's fatigued like we've seen some of the other women maybe not rest because they were getting tired, but because she still has enough juice to just keep going. Getting closer to that high point section where we've seen a couple of the women taking a moment to shake out there.
She's in the same situation as Bailey was earlier. She's basically just working on giving herself some insurance right now as far as getting to the semifinals are concerned. This is basically, as you heard Meagan say, the highest point that any other female climber has gotten on this route.
Setting up to get out to this other yellow open hand pinch. That foothold that she's on is another one of the volumes, but it's definitely kind of slippery. She needs to get her right foot up like she's doing now to be in the right position to stand on it, and then place the left. And then this is going to be a pretty committing, powerful move that should be a barn door if she's able to stick it. Nicely done. Having to use her palm against the wall to stop her swing in uncharted territory here.
Sheree is now the woman who has reached the highest point on Route B, and she is still moving.
Nice hold to shake on. It's not a huge hold, but it's pretty in cut. So she can take a moment before she gets into these open hand, pinchy, sloper holds.
Now just one clip to go for Sireesha here on Route B, and that's how close she is. That hold in the green box is where she's trying to get.
The next few moves are very powerful, and the finish move is another difficult move. The hold itself is good, but it's a very powerful move to get up into that jug. So she has to make sure she has enough juice after all that climbing. See if she can do it.
Ashima Sireesha already topped Route A earlier in the day and looking to become the first woman to get to the top of Route B, and now all that's left is the clip, and that'll be no problem. Ashima Sireesha perfect in qualifying, as she will lock up 48.12 points for getting to the top of Route B, and we will see her in the semifinals. Just another day at the office for Ashima Sireesha.
That moment of relief as she clips the final draw on this route, topping both climbs, setting her up perfectly going into the semifinal round. This move, which is what we call a barn door, almost came off, able to press her hand against the wall and pop her foot over a little to keep herself on there. Probably one of the most difficult moves on the route, and she was able to execute perfectly.
Ashima Sireesha gets herself into the semifinals and gets herself to the top of Route B. More from Alexandria after this. Back at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, where Xander Waller is on men's Route A and almost gets to the top. Great effort, though, from Xander Waller as he looked to match Shawn Bailey's effort from earlier and was just about 5 feet away from doing so before his grip slipped and he came off the wall.
It was a big fall he took there, too.
That's Charles Barron in the white who just came off the wall. And now Zach Galla is getting set on Route A, and Galla, as far as the U.S. overall national team is concerned, has already clinched a spot as he won the 2019 combined invitational back in January that was held in Salt Lake City. So he is moving on to the next phase of qualification for a possible spot on the team that will represent the United States in the Olympics. Galla with 410 points coming into this weekend. Nathaniel Pullman, Shawn Bailey, and Drew Luana would be the men who join them if these were the final standings, as the top 4 make it on to the U.S. national overall team.
It's really interesting and honestly really cool seeing both Zach Galla and Kyra Condi choose to do all these other competitions, because since they are on the team, they actually didn't need to do it at all, but clearly that's how driven and how much they love these competitions. So it's really cool to see them wanting to come to them all and, you know, do really well, and they've been able to execute, which has been really awesome to see.
And Galla was close to advancing to the speed finals earlier in the day. He finished 10th in that competition. The top 8 move on to the finals. And he will now begin his ascent on Route A. 43.660 points out of a possible 50.12 on Route B. He set himself up nicely for his second run.
Nice little barn door move there. No problem for Zach Galla as he continues to make his way through this more technical beginning of this route.
Clay Gordon is the man on the right of your screen in the gray. He is on Route B.
Both men are on the sections where they're just kind of starting to build the fatigue on these routes. The moves are just taxing enough to where when you get to the hard parts, it's a question of whether or not you have enough juice left, depending on how efficiently you were able to climb through those other less challenging but still taxing sections. Zach taking that moment to rest on that hold before he gets into his technical footwork section.
Now this is where really the first challenge is on Route A, as only one man has topped this route, and that was Shawn Bailey, who topped both routes to go perfect in the qualifying round and get himself into the semifinals. Now it's Zach Galla's turn.
Taking the second clip, and then we'll see whether or not he decides to take a moment to rest before heading into the steep section on this route.
Galla now about a third of his way up Route A.
Also engaging Shawn Faulkner.
It's important to take those moments to reset, because especially in such a competitive event where there's so much stress involved, when you start climbing, it's easy to just overgrip, and kind of what we call a flash pump can happen due to that overgripping and that high stress at the beginning of the route. So when you have a moment to just kind of like relax for a second, it's really important to take it so that you're ready for, you know, the real stuff near the top of the route.
Clay Gordon on the right. As he is in one of the big cruxes of Route B. Those two sort of half-dome volumes that he's working on.
If he can get out of this and get to that pocket, it'll give him a moment of relief before setting up for the other difficult section. Nice heel hook on the right to kind of calm down for a second as he moves his way through that big cylinder volume on small holds. Ooh, trying to find a knee bar. Haven't seen too many people get comfy there. Zach Galla is also on that better hold where he can get ready to set up for that technical tensiony section.
Galla just inching closer to matching Shawn Bailey, who's the only man to have topped this route. Clay Gordon, meanwhile,
Definitely
slowly but surely now moving up.
Moving quicker, but if he can keep his momentum.
And now he slips on the back half of that crux, and he is off the wall.
Zach Galla needs his left hand where his right hand just was. Wasn't able to get it, but really high for Zach Galla. Should be pretty good. Hopefully puts him.
Definitely be enough to get him into the semifinals thanks to his effort on Route B. And now we go to Margot Hayes, who's on women's Route A. And Hayes, with a 41.59 out of a possible 48.12 points, is trying to hold off Natalia Grossman and Claire Burfine in the overall standings. She will be keeping an eye on what those two women are doing, trying to finish ahead of them in this competition. The better you do in a competition, the more points you receive in those U.S. national team overall standings. If you win the competition, you get 200, and then the points decrease from there as you work your way down the standings.
Margot climbed really well in the first route. After everyone had just climbed one route, she had the high point. So we're looking to see her get pretty high on this route as well to secure a spot in the semifinal. She's been in finals, I mean, I think the last 4 or 5 years, so it's a place she's trying to get back to. So.
And earlier in the day, she didn't start off that strongly. She had a slip on her first run in the speed qualifying and failed to get herself into the top 8. She finished 25th in the speed competition. And that's good for only 12 points in the U.S. national team overall standings.
So 12 points are better than no points.
That is exactly right.
Taking that moment here to rest before having to commit to a few of those punchier moves before the real crux 3 clips away.
Margot Hayes about a third of the way into her ascent as she, as you heard Meagan say, approaches that first crux. And these are the overall standings for that U.S. national team. Margot Hayes with just a 53-point cushion over Claire Burfine coming into the weekend. But remember, because of what happened in the speed competition, this has changed a little bit. And unofficially, Natalia Grossman has now moved herself into 5th. With the speed competition still not complete, the top 8 spots have yet to be determined.
Margot getting into a couple of those better holds right before this route really starts to turn up. Probably going to take a couple moments to shake here. She has quite a lot of endurance. One of the sport climbers that does, along with a few other ones, just more endurance than you see a lot of the other competitors. Needs to go with her left hand here.
And another athlete who did very well at the Bouldering Open National Championships that were held in Bend, Oregon back in February. About 2.5 minutes remaining in her 6-minute window to get herself to the top here of Route A.
Starting to get to a section where we've seen only a few women, and we've only seen Ashima, Sireesha, and Michaela Kirsch get past the Waco. That's just at the edge of the screen. So Margot's in a good position right now, but she's a determined one, and she wants the top. Kind of tried to go out of sequence there for a second. I'm not sure if she remembers that there's the holds out right that she needs to go to.
I think there are a lot of female climbers right now who can sympathize with her where she's at, as many women have struggled on this portion of the route.
Needs to get into that blocked hold. It's a little precarious, just inching her fingers into there with a lot of control. Now needs to set up to go to that Waco. Only 2 women have been able to actually get control of that hold. Looks a little tired, but in the right position here.
And Hayes reaching with her right hand, just can't make it to that hold, and she is off the wall. But Margot Hayes looking like she's done enough to get herself into the semifinals. We'll have more qualifying from the Sport Open National Championship from Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome back to the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, as the qualifying rounds for the Sport Championship continues. That is Dylan Barks making his way up men's Route B at 42.12 out of a possible 46.13 on his first climb up Route A. And we are being joined now by the man who set these routes, chief route setter for this competition, Ryan Sewell. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I know you have something in mind when you set these routes. How has that played out compared to what is actually happening?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, first of all. Thus far, the qualification round's been really, really good. We've set out to challenge the climbers in a diversity of styles and at a very high level, and thus far, things are looking good.
It looks like these routes we've been talking about, you did a nice job of making them harder as they go on. What kind of things did you like to throw at the climbers as they make their ascents to make sure that things don't get easier for them?
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're avoiding any possible resting positions. That's definitely something that enables the climbers to recover and in turn are able to do many more moves after that. And then after that, we want to do a few different things to try and keep them challenged. One would be a bit of a diversity in style, so not necessarily giving them the exact same type of movement, one after another. And then the other would be just the general pure difficulty of the climbing. So the holds they're grabbing onto are getting smaller, the positions that they're in are getting more powerful, and the overall scenario is getting a little bit more stressful as they get fatigued.
How many different versions, I guess I would say, of these routes did you kind of have to test before you came up with the one that you really settled on?
Yeah, each route gets put on the wall, and then we take a first pass at it. Usually the route setting team will decide who wants to go first and try and make the initial concept work. And then after that, it becomes more dialing in the specifics. So each one of these, depending on how close it was from the get-go, probably 3 or 4 different versions before we finally got it tuned up to what you see now.
How much does what happens here in the qualifying rounds, how does that affect how you will lay out the routes for not only the semifinals but ultimately the finals?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we do is we have already set the semifinals and the finals in the week prior, and the intention is that we are able to view what happens in qualifiers and take some bits of information about the overall level of the field, and then make minor changes to the semifinal. Again, review what happens in the semifinal and ideally make very minor changes to the final.
Well, and after talking to you last night about the routes, it seems that it's kind of playing out similar to how you would hope. So I feel like you guys are pretty spot on with the level, having just few tops. And I mean, this field has a lot of very strong sport climbers, so it is necessary to make it more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. 162 competitors between both genders combined. So it's definitely something that we strive for, is to try and get a few tops. Having a route that doesn't have a top at all isn't ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. The last thing that we want to do is have these competitors come out and them not be challenged and us not learn something from their performance on the wall.
Dylan Barks, meanwhile, is on one of the big cruxes here on Route B. Did you know this was going to be such a sticking point when you set it up?
This here on Route B?
Yes.
Yeah, we felt like the route got a bit progressive, meaning that the difficulty got harder as you got higher and you had to keep fighting for it. And the intention would be that, oh, here we go. Oh, so close.
Yeah, Barks just can't make that grab with his left hand.
Really nice move there because it's a dead point to the pocket, smaller surface for him to latch onto there, and after climbing so many moves, he's a little more fatigued and isn't quite able to get in there as efficiently as he kind of needed to set up for really the most fun part of the route.
Yeah, that's right. We're hoping that this evening we get to see somebody top this route, show you guys the little stunt we put on at the finish there for you.
Something that I've been told is called the bat hang.
That is right. If you know anything, obviously, about bats hang upside down. So they get completely inverted and are hanging from their toes on the finish hold before they can reach up to the finish with their hands.
We saw Shawn Bailey actually execute that earlier when he topped it, and it is a very impressive movement to see if a climber gets that high. I have no idea how they're able to pull that off at that fatigue level, but the best in the country find a way, and we've seen a few do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very, very happy that we ended up in that orientation there and that finish sequence, because of course it's crowd pleasing, but again, it keeps the climbers on their toes. It makes them have
Literally.
to stay. Pun intended.
Is that something that you knew you wanted to include? You said someplace we got to get someone to hang from their feet here.
Yeah, it was more a conversation that happened in the lift. So we set all these routes in like a big boom lift, and fortunately we have 2 of these this week, and it's enabled us to have 2 teams running at the same time. And one of the teams was up there, and the initial last bolt of the route was in a completely different orientation. And when they were up there making some changes and looking at some things, one of the setters had this idea of, oh, we can create this bat hang scenario. What do you think? And the other setter, of course, was game for it. And they put it on the wall, and sure enough, it worked out.
Here's Hobbs Kessler, who is on Route A and was close to the top, and he is off. But Hobbs, with that run, will certainly improve his chances of getting into the top 20 and moving on to the semifinals.
Yeah, he climbed very well in qualification Route B as well. So he's looking like he's in a pretty good position.
Charles Hammer is the other man on the wall right now. And Isabel Gifford just falling off female Route A.
These walls are also very tall, which, you know, some people are more accustomed to walls this tall, but not everybody is. And I feel like we are seeing a little bit of that throughout the field. You can tell the people who are used to being on the wall for this long.
Yeah, 60 feet is quite a ways. One thing that we were a little bit apprehensive about going into the week was 60 feet of climbing in 6 minutes at this level of difficulty is kind of a big ask. And so we set out with the intention of trying to keep the move count a little bit lower, somewhere between 45 and 55 moves on, you know, across all the routes, ensured to us at least that we would minimize the amount of competitors that are running out of time before finishing a route.
And then that way it keeps it to where you're focused more on the actual climbing than the resting, like you were talking about earlier, because that's the last thing we don't want to see is people just resting for 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Charles Hammer is the only climber on the wall, as he is now being joined by Ben Blackmore, who just started his ascent on Route A.
I've been finding it really interesting that you're seeing a lot of men on Route A get to that head wall, but then still unable to top, whereas we're not seeing as many men get near the end of Route B, though it's been topped more times.
Yeah, Route A, the orange route, has a very vertical finish. I think that wall is 5 degrees overhanging. So it means that the climbers are able to get their weight under their feet. But at that point, we kind of change gears on them and ask them to do a lot more balancy movement that puts them in positions that they could potentially slip off, lose balance, and fall. Whereas the top of the blue route is more the fatigue in your forearms is building, you're getting the pump. And by the time you get to the showy finish, as long as you're not too pumped and you execute the movement, you should be okay.
Nakaya Sanders is on the right of your screen. And on the left is Ben Blackmore. He's on men's Route A, and Sanders on women's Route A.
And I think these two routes too, the men's Quali A, which is the orange route, and the women's Quali B, the yellow route, are both very similar in terms of their overall style and the effect that they're having on the field. The intention there is just to try and balance the test of the climbers between the more physical, powerful, endurance style climbing and the more technical, slow, face climbing.
Yeah, it's cool to look at those two climbs because you can almost see the separate boulder problems within the routes with that technical beginning and then the steep section to another tech section followed by uncomfortable movement.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of my favorite things is to get the climbers in situations where they get into a groove after only a couple of bolts and then ask them to change gears and do something very, very different.
And I can definitely attest to that feeling as I've climbed so many of your routes in the past. And it's a feeling in a competition that is one that is just a little terrifying at times.
Nakaya Sanders flirted with a little bit of a disaster there. She almost came off the wall but was able to save it, so she stays alive on Route A. And on the right of your screen is Julia Talbot. She's on women's Route B.
I really do like the use of that press section there. It's really cool to see that in the middle of the route. Kind of throws, I mean, some people go through it smoothly, but others it gets them a little bit out of sorts, as we just saw, unfortunately, with Julia Talbot.
And this one for me, especially being a taller male, getting my foot up like that is incredibly difficult. But you see some of these girls who are incredibly flexible and quite a bit shorter have a very easy time, hand next to the foot and keep moving.
Ryan, we want to thank you for stopping by, and well done on these routes. Ryan Sewell, Chief Route Setter for this competition. We will be back with more qualifying from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, after this. Day one of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships continues as we are working our way through the field for the sport competition. They look to qualify into the semifinals. That is Sienna Kopp, who on Route A scored 35.59 out of a possible 47.12 points. And for Kopp, both the speed and the sport competitions are big for her. As far as the U.S. overall national team standings are concerned, she came into the weekend in 7th place overall. The good news for her, she is still alive in the speed competition. She is one of the 8 athletes who made it into the finals. If she can get into the semifinals in the sport competition and then on to the finals, she could really score some valuable points and possibly overtake the women in front of her and work her way into the top 4 in those overall standings. Remember, you get points based on how well you do in competitions, and that's how they figure out who is going to end up on that U.S. national team. That is a big step, not the final step, but a big step towards qualifying for the 2020 Summer Olympics.
Yeah, Sienna is definitely in a good place, though sport is her weaker of the disciplines. She definitely still has a chance to improve here. But speed and bouldering are definitely her 2 better disciplines. She really needs to get her right foot up on that other hold, the other yellow hold that's closer to her knee. She had it on the lower one. And if she could just get her foot up there, she could kind of move her weight a bit to get out of this funky section. I have noticed, though, that this section is a little more difficult for those taller competitors, and she is one of those taller competitors. And just as Ryan Sewell was saying, it's a little bunchier in this first part of women's Route B. So it gives those taller competitors a little more of an issue and kind of zaps their energy. So her right foot just got up a little higher. She keeps moving it, trying to recover and not waste too much energy. But
5'8" and a wingspan that's 5'9". That's what the +1 means. It just means that her wingspan is 1 inch longer than her height.
Really nice fight there, making it work for her. Should be a better position for her to relax a little. If you can see, I don't know if you can tell as well on the screen, but her shoulder was rubbed against those volumes a little bit, making it a bit red.
Got a red mark there on the upper left-hand part of her shoulder. Now reaching another clip to add a .01 to her score.
She knows how within her grasp things are on that overall, so she's gonna fight tooth and nail throughout this entire competition, and she's doing a really good job right now of figuring out how to keep going on this route.
Now the good news for Sienna is basically all the other women that she's chasing in those overall standings are done in the speed competition, except for Brooke Rabatou, but Brooke was so far ahead of Sienna that probably was going to be a problem regardless, but she really has a chance to make up some ground, and now Sienna is off. Got about short of the halfway point before coming off the wall. And now the question is, did she do enough to get herself at least into the semifinals?
She started getting her foot up there fairly easy to begin with, but then wasn't able to find the exact balance position to stay on the wall there. She did do pretty well on route number 1, so we'll just have to wait and see how the scores turn out, but she definitely would have benefited from getting a little further on that route. But definitely can't say she didn't try, because she fought super hard.
Great effort from Sienna Kopp. That's Eric Libby on men's Route B. Next to him, Anthony Lessig just came off of men's Route A.
Eric Libby getting into that somewhat uncomfortable section of men's Route B. Gonna probably try and double clip here. If he can get up in here, he can maybe take a breather. Nice efficiency there. You can see he's shaking a little bit. Now he's in that place where he can kind of take a second. But that tenuous section right where he was before was having him a little bit in an uncomfortable position.
So he does have time to rest, but the bottom line is things don't get any easier, and he's off the wall. You saw his first score on Route A, 21.36 out of a possible 46.13 points. So he really needed a strong performance here on Route B to get himself into the top 20, and got past the halfway point of that route. Reaching the back half of the qualifying, and we'll continue from Alexandria when we come back. The 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships are brought to you by The North Face, inspiring and enabling exploration since 1966. Day one continuing here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. We had the speed qualifying earlier in the day, the sport qualifying wrapping up here on Friday evening before action resumes tomorrow. That is Merritt Ernsberger on Route B. And that's a look at Brooke Rabatou, who's getting set to start her run up Route B. And Rabatou came into this weekend solidly in the top 4. It would basically take a disaster for her over the next day to not make it onto that U.S. national team. Third place with 342 points, but the good news for her is she is in the final 8 in the speed competition, so she will be able to add valuable points to her total there, as you get 200 points for an event win. So she is guaranteed at least an 8th place finish. And speed, that would earn her 80 points. And looking to get into at least the semifinals here in the sport competition. On Route A, 42.6 out of a possible 47.12 points. So very close to getting to the top of Route A, and looking to duplicate that performance here on Route B.
Brooke's another one of those climbers that really excels at speed, or I'm sorry, excels at bouldering and sport climbing, and has improved so much in speed, seeing as she is, like you were just saying, Shawn, one of the only other women that are kind of close to that overall that got into the speed final, as well as Sienna Kopp. So this is a more comfortable position for her, sport climbing, and she's been in the finals over the past few years about every time. So she's definitely looking to get back into a final this year.
And we were saying earlier, you were saying just how well-rounded she is, and when it comes to those Olympics in 2020, it's still a lot of work to be done, but it's hard to think that she won't be one of the women who is wearing the red, white, and blue in Japan in 2020.
She definitely has a really good chance of being one of those women. You know, it's interesting to see how so many of the women and men have adapted since the announcement of the Olympics and the 3 disciplines. And so many of the men and women that were good at bouldering and sport have really gotten into the speed and been able to excel quickly and put them in a position where they are so well-rounded now, and it's just becoming more of a possibility for them. Just getting into that section where it gets a little more powerful.
Rabatou really does kind of come from the first family of climbing. Her brother's a competitor, both her parents were competitors, her mother's a coach.
Definitely kind of like the first family of climbing. Perfect, because we're near DC, right?
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
It's so true, and you know, sport climbing is something that both Robin and Didier Rabatou were always so good at, and I mean, watching their kids climb, it's just like a natural intuitiveness that they have that, you know, the rest of us would like kill to have, basically. So it's kind of really cool to watch that next generation really take the reins and continue to excel in climbing.
I'm guessing the Rabbitoh kids were probably climbing before they were even walking.
I believe they were. She's getting into that section with the subtle movement here. She's going to flip her hand, does it nicely.
Brooke Rabbitoh looking really good here. She is now in the back third of this climb. Got close to topping Route A, and this effort more than likely will get her into the top 20.
And considering how well she did on the first climb, where she is right now puts her in a position where semifinals should definitely be happening for her. We've only seen Ashima Sireesha up in this position. See if she can stick that. Ooh, she goes with an undercling there instead of a Gaston, which is flipping her hand a different way, which is how we saw Ashima do it, creating the barn door. So she then is able to keep her body into the wall and not barn door, having to use that extra energy to control the swing. Really smart climbing there by Brooke Rabbitoh.
Now one clip remaining for her, and she's trying to get to that hold in the green box and finish out her day with a top on Route B.
Looks pretty good coming into her. Nice use of her flexibility there. Just one more move.
Left hand needs to get on that hold. There it is, and now the clip to just close it out. Nothing but a formality for Rabbitoh, and Brooke Rabbitoh tops Route B, and we will see her in the semifinals.
That is one of the things I love about climbing so much. I mean, Ashima and Brooke are pretty similar in terms of stature as well, and still they did parts of the route differently, which I think is so cool about climbing. There's always a different way to do something.
One more look at Rabbitoh getting to the top.
She had a nice flip there on that pinch, setting her up perfectly to get into the jug at the finish and not have any problem clipping that last quick draw for a top.
And we mentioned this earlier, but you get so hung up on the physical gifts that these athletes have and the talent that it takes to be able to negotiate their way to the top of a problem, and you forget about all the mental work that goes in as well. It's almost equal to, if not greater than, what you need to have physically to get yourself up the wall.
I feel like the mental is an even more important part of these high-level competitions, especially those competitors that have been competing at this level for so long, which is, you know, where we see a lot of our people a lot of the competitors that are in the top 10. They've been doing this for so long, so you know, they're all physically prepared. It is whether or not you can execute mentally on the day of competition.
Now Josh Meagan is trying to execute here on Route B, and that's the portion that we've seen so many men get hung up on, and Meagan is off the wall. The Brooke Rabbitoh with a top as we reach the back half of qualifying here in Alexandria, Virginia. Qualifying continues for the sport competition here in Alexandria, Virginia, and the big thing that is at stake here is a spot on the 2019 U.S. national team. The top 4 men go. They don't necessarily go to the Olympics, but you got to get on the national team if you want to qualify. And Matt Foltz right now is in 5th place overall. He's got to get into the top 4 and catch Drew Ruwana if he wants to earn a spot onto that national team. And there's a look at Matt Foltz. So he really needs to have a strong effort here after a score of 39.61 out of a possible 46.13. So sets himself up nicely after a solid run on Route A. And if you can duplicate that here on Route B, he will move into the semifinals, where he is looking to overtake Drew Ruwana for that final spot on the United States overall national team.
Bouldering is generally the discipline that Matt Foltz excels at most, though I know he's been really working hard to get better at sport climbing and speed climbing, which is definitely shown in the last few months. So that overall is something he's trying to be a part of, and he definitely has the talent and capability to make that happen.
The man on the left in the white top is Coulter Holden. He is on Route A. As Kaylee Marcoux just came off the wall on women's Route A. That was on the right of your screen.
Matt Foltz looking pretty casual here. These moves for his strength are probably not too difficult. It's all going to come down to how much endurance he has to do the hard moves when it comes to the end.
Foltz approaching that first really big crux of this route.
Really smart placement there with the knee bar to kind of take the weight off his arms. When you are more of a boulderer and you don't sport climb as much, and you don't have all that endurance, you know, the general shaking when you're on your arms really doesn't help. You really need to be in a nice heel hook or a knee bar like Matt Foltz is in right now, or just kind of standing. But the more hanging on your arms, the less you're able to actually recover. So this is a really nice place for him to get some juice, because some of the other places won't be as good of rest for him. Definitely making good decisions here.
And that first big half dome of a volume represents the beginning of the really toughest part that he will face, you know, on this route. Things obviously get more difficult after this, but this is the first real big crux that he's going to face.
Still looks pretty fresh here, which is good. Clips both the draws, easily gets to that next hold. Now he's gonna wanna move quickly through this section to the pocket in order to get set up for that next section. Starting to get a little shaky.
This is the point where a lot of men have seen their climbs end.
Looking pretty good though. Able to find the right places. Oh, almost did not see that hold that was on there. He was about to go all the way out. Another knee bar, really smart. Getting into that more precarious section before that fun section that hopefully we get a chance to see.
Chief route setter Ryan Sewell joined us earlier. If you missed that, he said he really wanted to see one of these athletes get towards the top of this route, because you need to pull off a pretty exceptional movement in order to get to the top, something known as a bat hang, and Matt Foltz is getting closer to that point, and he is off. But Foltz looks like he may have done enough to get himself into the semifinals and keep his chances of earning a spot on that U.S. overall national team alive, as he came into this weekend in 5th place in those overall standings. He's got to catch Drew Ruwana if he wants that to happen.
It's really good climbing there from Matt Foltz. If you've been watching this feed today, he made all of those moves look pretty easy. He just kind of ran out of gas there at the top.
That was Arabella Jeriel who just came off the wall. And Amanda Brownstein is now the only climber left on the wall at this moment.
Getting ready to sit in that rest to recover a bit before that next section.
And in case you're wondering, they cannot use those clips for any sort of support. If you're new to the sport, that is illegal. Those things are there just for safety purposes only, although they do add points to your score, 0.01 every time you clip in.
Yes, but there's slack in the rope, so they're not actually able to weight them at all. And then sometimes you'll see the silver bolt hangers on the wall, and they have to do their best to avoid them, because if they weight any of those, they'll be disqualified from the point at which they weighted. So they can get points up to wherever that incident happened, but they're not allowed to step on them.
And Brownstein is one of the 8 women who made it to the finals for the speed competition. That will be contested tomorrow.
Getting ready to start moving again on this route. Needs to move quick through this section to get to those bigger holds where she can possibly rest, depending on her endurance level. Really good execution there.
Solid grip with her right hand. And now this is the first really big sticking point on Route A that has gotten to a lot of women and ended their climbs.
Able to get to that hole not without too much stress.
Each of those holds is worth a point. The higher you go, the more points you receive. And then again, you get some additional points for clipping in, 0.01. And then the judges, if you don't get to the top, may add some additional points depending on what you do before you fall off the wall.
She definitely looks a little more fatigued as she was kind of moving a little more frantically. Now this is that point where you really need to go with your left hand, but we've seen so many women try and go with their right. If she can make it happen. Now there's a possibility to match, but I feel like that would be very awkward.
Not a lot of space on that hold. Matching just means getting both hands on, and then she goes for that usable space as she sort of propelled herself up. That might be worth additional points. The top 20 moving on here in the sport competition. Back with more in Alexandria. Back at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia, as Drew Ruwana is getting set to climb Route A. Ruwana coming into the weekend with that fourth and final spot on the overall national team, 46.61 out of a possible 50.12 points on Route B. Ruwana just trying to hold off Matt Foltz in the overall standings that are determined by your finishes in these events, and that ultimately determine what four men will advance on that U.S. overall national team that will then take place in those worldwide events, and that will ultimately determine if any of these men will represent the United States at the Olympics in 2020. And those are the standings coming in. Ruwana with 283, Matt Foltz with 197. That was before this weekend began.
And Drew is definitely very strong when it comes to sport climbing, something that comes naturally to him and he's excelled at basically his whole life, as most of the competitors that we're seeing in the top have been doing this for most of their life.
Which is scary because these kids are so young. Climbing is such a young person's sport.
It definitely is, especially in the competitive realm, more so than outdoors. A lot of kids are getting involved in climbing a bit earlier these days, and competitions are a great way to get involved in the sport, and so that becomes the main focus. Drew's setting up for that nice little rest section here before he gets into the steep section. Earlier in the day, it looked like he made a minor mistake, and that's why he came off of the first route. He definitely had the potential to top, so I'm sure he'll be looking for a top here and paying a bit more attention to every body movement and body positioning so that he is able to execute the way he knows he can.
And earlier in the day in the speed qualifying, he just missed getting into the finals. The eight top times advanced to the finals, and he was 9th. But that will score him a lot of points in those overall standings. That was good for a total of 74. So he has put a little bit of distance between himself and Matt Foltz. So a little more breathing room for Drew Ruwana as far as the spot on the U.S. overall national team is concerned, thanks to that 9th place finish in the speed competition. That is not done yet. The top 8 have yet to be determined, and now Ruwana making some good progress and continuing to methodically move his way up Route A and ultimately work his way into the semifinals. Out of the 92 men in the field of this sport competition, only 20 moving on to the next round.
Drew chose not to rest at all there on that lower pinch hold where we've seen a lot of the men take a moment to rest. So he must be feeling pretty good, which is setting him up nicely coming into this next section. That's that more difficult section where we've seen a lot of people kind of get into it a bit, but then mess up and fall.
Shawn Bailey is the only man who has topped this route. We've seen a couple men come close, but Bailey, the only man who's gotten to that volume that is surrounded into the pink tape successfully. And now Ruana getting very close as well.
Just a couple moves left, though. None of them are easy. Very balancy, and it's very necessary to be in the absolute perfect body positions to make sure you're set up nicely to go to that finish hold, which is just a volume with a bad hold on top.
And he's searching for that hold with his right hand, gets his left hand on, and now the clip. And Drew Ruana becomes the second man to top Route A. And Drew Ruana will enjoy the ride down as he has earned himself some more work, as we will see him in the semifinals.
He's making it onto that finish hold without any problem and able to clip. It was funny because some of the route setters were telling me that even the clip was difficult, and both Shawn Bailey and Drew Ruana made it look pretty easy, so it might just be in a league of their own over here.
Drew Ruana has had a really good start to his weekend, 9th in the speed competition earlier, and now getting himself into the semifinals of the sport competition that will be contested tomorrow. Elizabeth Sepulveda, the upper middle portion of your screen, doing a nice job of securing a hold on that volume. She's on women's Route A. 27.06 out of a possible 48.12 points on Route B earlier in the day.
She's definitely one of the shorter competitors, so that move to the hold she's on now is a little more jumpy than for other people, so it's a nice place to then reset before this next section, after probably feeling a little more frazzled going to a hold like that.
Sepulveda doing a nice job working her way up this volume, and has a solid hold with the right hand and eyes the clip to her left. And has that secure for an additional .01 to her total.
Just needs to get up on this a little. Unfortunately, she grabbed the worst part of that hold. She just needed to bump her hand up a little more and to get to that better spot to then kind of relax for a second. Good fight, though, from Elizabeth Sepulveda.
Qualifying is done now on women's Route B, and we have a handful of competitors left for the women on Route A. Sarah Kate Ashton will be the next woman to attempt that route. Over on the men's side, Danny Griffith is on the right of your screen, and it's Noah Ridge on the left. Ridge is on Route A, Griffith on Route B.
Noah's on that nice resting hold where he can set up to get into this technical footwork section.
A good effort on Route B earlier in the day. More than 39 out of a possible 50.12 points.
Another one of the good sport climbers in the competition. He's been in sport finals before at nationals and generally does well in sport climbing, so has the potential to get pretty far on this route.
Danny Griffith continuing to inch his way up Route B. Noah Ridge on a route that only 2 men have topped, and he's following the man who just did it. That's Drew Ruana. And Shawn Bailey did it earlier this evening.
Where Noah is right now, you can see those 2 orange holds on that next volume. We've seen a few men struggle getting into that section, but if they can get there and then do the next couple moves to get to that longer pinch, they have a moment where they can kind of get it back a little bit and then keep going on the head wall.
Noah Ridge continuing to rack up some points with every handhold he secures.
Getting really close to that good hold.
Sarah Kate Ashton is the only woman on the wall right now, as all the women who had to climb Route B are done. So only women remaining in the competition are climbing Route A at this point.
Getting a couple shakes here for Noah Ridge.
Danny Griffith just fell off of Route B. Drew Ruana was able to top this route. Noah Ridge looking to maybe start a little bit of a streak here, as he'd be the 2nd consecutive man to top it, but he still has a lot of work before he can get there.
Just to flip that hand, nicely done. He didn't necessarily have his left foot in the best place, but he was able to make it work. Legs getting a little shaky. Ugh.
And Ridge is off, but that effort should go a long way towards advancing him in this competition onto the semifinal round. Back to Sarah Kate Ashton now on Route A.
Just looking pretty smooth here. Has a committing move. We've seen it done a few different ways. You can either go right hand to this and then bump, or you can cross. She chose the bump method, where she moved her one hand to the next hold. On to the good part here, where she can then take another breather before the most difficult section of the route thus far.
She had more than 31 points on Route A out of a possible 47.12. Right now, in decent position to possibly get into the semifinals. She can secure a few more handholds and lock up some more points here on this climb.
Really needs her left hand where her right hand is. See if she can figure out how to switch it. Ooh, nicely done there by Sarah Kate. See if just a little too much momentum trying to get to that next hold, but she definitely should get usable surface there, because she was all over it.
And Sarah Kate Ashton is off the wall as we reach the back portion of qualifying here. We'll be back with more. Closing out day 1 of competition at the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships from the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Simon Bankert is the man on the wall in the red shirt, trying to get himself into the semifinals. And we keep referencing the top 20. The reason we can't show you the top 20 is that your overall standing for the qualification is based on your performance on both routes, and with more athletes still out there and still climbing, those standings are constantly changing. But if you are an athlete who manages to get pretty high on both routes, odds are you're going to make it into the semifinals.
Simon Bankert fighting his way through this section, getting to that more comfortable stance right now, hoping to get a little something back, calm it down before the next difficult section.
We are more than halfway through qualifying for the men. The women are actually getting set to wrap up. And once everyone is done, we will be able to tell you who the top 20 athletes are who will be moving on to the semifinals as Baker's run comes to an end.
Isabella Novak on the red route here, working her way into that middle section on the wall, trying to figure out how to get her feet up.
Just 25.56 points out of a possible 48.12 on Route B. So Novak really needs to get herself up a good portion of this route to advance in the competition.
Getting ready to set up for that move that's been somewhat dynamic. I have to match this hold here before she goes by putting both hands on that hold.
Tyler Thompson is in the opening stages of his climb up Route A. Novak on the right of your screen. Going for the clip. Now going to the chalk bag.
You'll see climbers when they are resting, generally their arms will be straight, as that is the best way to recover while you're on the wall. Any kind of locked off position stops the blood flow, making it more difficult and more taxing, and basically not recovering at all. So that elongated stance is the best.
Novak finds a hold she likes with her right hand and then matches with her left.
Trying to find the feet to get up into this little punchy move to those smaller crimp holds. Oh.
Got her right hand on it, so likely that she will receive 0.5 additional points for that. As she comes off the wall. So Novak will now have to sit and wait for the final standings to see if she is inside that top 20. As Derek New and Tyler Thompson. New is on the right, Thompson is on the left.
Derek having a nice rhythm as he makes his way to the middle of the wall. See whether he decides to try and put a knee bar in there for the rest here. Currently not in that position, but we'll see if he takes a moment. Looks like he's going to keep going.
Thompson, meanwhile, on the left of your screen, is taking quite a bit of time to move through this portion of the route. Just 6 minutes for each athlete on his run, and they are on separate clocks.
Derek fighting his way through that section. Tyler Thompson tries to figure out the feet here. It's a kind of a committing move here. A little bit of fatigue from Derek. If he can get up into this, he might be able to relax for a second before that next section.
This is where the difficulty really starts to increase for Derek New, as Tyler Thompson has come off the wall on men's Route A. And now Derek New slips. And that portion of the route has just proved to be way too much for some of these climbers, and that's where a lot of ascents have come to an end. And that's Meagan Lynch. Great result for her on Route B, 41.59 out of a possible 48.12 points.
Definitely has the ability to get far on this route. We'll see if she's able to execute where she needs to in order to get through those cruxes, those difficult sections on the route. Has a really nice rhythm currently. getting close to that first little uncomfortable section. After this clip, she'll have to do that committing move to a pretty good hold, but it is committing. And causes a bit of a swing, so you have to control that swing there, which will create a bit of fatigue as you continue your way up the route.
And like we just saw with Derek New in that really challenging part, that's those two half dome volumes that are to the left of Meagan Lynch. This is where the challenge now really starts on Route A for the women.
Yeah, everything kind of turns up a notch starting here and doesn't let up enough. So you gotta rest wisely, but not for too long. Fine line and a bit of balance that goes into being successful throughout the rest of this route. Did a good job of moving quickly there. Right to that good part of the hold so she doesn't have to bump her way through the bad part.
Nice job securing her left hand on that hold. Matches with her right. Now we'll go for the clip. Meagan Lynch
drops the rope there. Was going to try to clip with her left hand, but wasn't able to get around that sloper that she's on, so had to go with her right.
And at this point of the climb, I mean, that's just, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is just more energy you're expending.
You'd be surprised how difficult once you start getting tired, just holding on to the wall with one hand becomes. It becomes like a stressful, almost impossible thing. Looks like she just used her right hand to kind of rock up over a little bit on that. She's gonna need to go left hand though if she wants to get any further. Nicely done. Trying to get up out of there, kind of going the wrong way. Oh.
And Lynch just could not find the hold and she is off, but follows up a solid effort on Route B with a good climb up Route A.
Able to get her left hand to that crimp and really pull. She was close to the wall like she needed to be, but she was kind of on the right side instead of kind of going up underneath that hold she was going to on the volume, kind of messing up her trajectory. But really good climbing there for Meagan Lynch, especially after doing so well on the other route.
We'll be back with more qualifying from Alexandria after this. Qualifying round for the 2019 USA Climbing Sport Open National Championship continues here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. We have reached the latter stages for the men. The women have almost wrapped up. Only 4 climbers remain. And that is Ross Fulkerson, who is well into men's Route A and looking for his final approach to the top of this route.
Ross is into that nice section where he was on a good hold and setting up for this tensiony move. It gets a little technical on this head wall. Needs to slowly get over to that pinch hold and then flip his right hand in order to stay close to the wall and not fall out. Very nicely done there. Definitely seen a few people up here, but only 2 have made it to that very top.
Shawn Bailey and Drew Ruan are the only 2 men who have topped this route. Seen a lot of guys get to this point, but just proves to be too challenging for them.
Ooh, little slip there, just too much.
Yeah, Fulkerson just can't hang on, but given what he did on Route B, looks like he will be moving on. Top 20 going on to the semifinals, and again, it's based on your finishes in both Route A and B. They combine that together, and then they determine who moves on. As Garrett Gregor, 29.58 out of a possible 46.13 points on Route A. He's on men's Route B right now.
You may recognize Garrett if you tuned into the Bouldering Nationals feed. He was one of the route setters at that event. He did the fun triple clutch demonstration for us.
And he used to coach Brooke Rabitou and Margot Hayes.
Yes, he's still an ABC coach. Brooke is currently in San Diego in college, and Margot travels a lot for climbing, so she's only in Boulder sometimes, but she still goes to practice every now and then.
Thank you.
Taking a moment to look at the clock, he's in that really nice knee bar position. Been in sport finals before. Last minute decision to do this competition. So excited to see him out here. Looking really smooth right now on this route.
Out of that first half dome volume, as the difficulty begins to really increase for Garrett.
Once he gets into this hold, he can kind of position himself a little better to make that clip. Easily making him into that next hold. A little tangle with the rope, but gets out of it nicely. Needs to get into that pocket. He's pretty close as long as he can hit all these holds nicely. You see there's a blocker there on his left hand. So you kind of have to go past the hold and then fall back into it, which after so many feet of climbing is definitely more difficult than these climbers make it look.
Doing a good job of keeping his grip with his right hand on that horizontal volume.
Oh,
And
no.
just
Ooh.
loses his grip as he reaches for the clip. And he is upset with himself for that one.
Little slip there, and man, falling with the rope in your hand after you've taken up that much slack, it was quite a big fall there for Garrett. Just trying to reach up, and his toe hook accidentally came out and almost as he clipped, which created a bigger fall, but definitely not what he wanted to happen, but good climbing there from Garrett Greger.
And like you said earlier, when you get fatigued, that looks like an easy movement, but it really isn't.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how difficult clipping becomes.
Carrie Scott with a successful clip of her own as she is on women's Route A, 28.37 out of a possible 48.12 points on her first ascent of Route B earlier in the day.
Pausing to chalk and check out the rest of the route, as we've seen a lot of the women here, and as well as rest. I don't think anyone's blown through this. It seems to be the place to rest.
Scott employing the similar technique we've seen so many other women go to at this point of the climb. And it's so far serving her well.
A little bit of hesitation there, but able to get on that crimp. Now she needs to bump with her right hand like she just did. Setting her up nicely to clip. And take a moment to chalk. Definitely where she needs to clip from. Choosing not to. This will work too, but most of the women have clipped from lower. It's a little precarious with her foot there, and I think that's why a lot of the women have clipped lower, but it still worked.
She's got that rope hung up a little bit on her left leg.
Luckily at this point, if she were to fall, it would just fly out.
Now going for another clip and adding .01 to her score. She looks to get past this first really big sticking point on this route.
Trying to get a little bit of energy back so that she can set up for this next difficult section. I've only seen a few women get through it. And these next two moves are quite powerful too. Once you get past these next two, it's more like hip positioning and grabbing small holds. but to get into that section, you have to be powerful to get to the next 2 crimps.
Just 6 minutes for Carrie Scott to get as far up this route as she possibly can. We saw Ashima Sheree get to the top of this route, but she did it outside of the 6-minute window.
Like what Ryan Sewell said, is these walls are tall, so it is a lot of moves for these climbers to do within that 6 minute. You can't rest too long. She needs her left hand there if she's going to be able to continue.
Every handhold is worth a point. Sometimes they're worth 2 because you have to get your right and your left hands on them. And there are 47 scored handholds on this route.
She's just trying to get as much back as she can using her calf to kind of relieve some of the stress on her arms there. She's gonna need to start going for it soon though. See if she can get her left hand up there.
And she's in the final seconds of her window. Now she's just got to try to score some points, down to 10 seconds left. Now 5, and Carrie Scott has now timed out. And she gets the call from her judge, and she will hop off the wall. So only 2 women remain in qualifying. Still have several men to go, and we'll have it for you when we return to Alexandria, Virginia. Back inside the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia for the qualifying round of the sport competition. And Josh Levin is struggling with that horizontal volume on men's Route B, but still able to keep his hold and keep himself alive. 38.11 out of a possible 46.13 points on his climb up Route A.
He's trying to figure out a way to get over to that other volume without being too dynamic, because at this point in the route, he's been climbing for a really long time, and he needs more of his limbs on the wall versus swinging. Really good effort there.
He'll probably get half a point for getting his hand on usable surface before he fell off. The judges will be the final arbiter of that. 11, given his 2 climbs combined, looks like he has a chance of getting into the top 20. That's Sam McQueen, who scored 41.09 out of a possible 50.12 points on his climb on Route B. He's now on Route A.
Looking pretty good here. Getting to this somewhat difficult section before the rest. Sam's been doing well across the board this year. Did really well at Bouldering Nationals and looking to do well here this weekend. A little bit of hesitation before he went to that pocket hold and wasn't able to get exactly in the right spot.
The left hand slipping, and McQueen is off the wall. Sylvie Crespin is off of Route A, and now only 1 woman is left before we close out qualifying for them, and that is Maggie Hammer. And we will have her climb when we come back to Alexandria, Virginia. The 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships are brought to you by The North Face, inspiring and enabling exploration since 1966. The American Art Museum in Washington, D.C., not too far from where we are here in Alexandria, Virginia, and we have the final women's climber in this qualifying round on the wall, and it's Maggie Hammer. Next to her is Jessie Grouper.
Both Maggie and Jessie are making their way through these opening moves on the routes that are meant to tax them the perfect amount before getting to the more difficult sections further up on the wall.
32.57 out of a possible 48.12 points on Route B.
Good efficient movement from Maggie Hammer here. Setting up for that more dynamic move where she needs to control the swing, which will tax the body a little bit before she can rest and recover, hopefully.
And both Hammer and Grouper on the left of your screen are approaching the first really big cruxes of their respective routes.
Nice big jump there for Maggie Hammer. Hoping one day there might be style points in climbing.
Adding another layer of complexity to the scoring system.
Totally kidding, I take it back. Both Jessie and Maggie in good positions to shake out. Jessie using a knee bar. Oh wow, I guess they want to climb in unison right now.
Maggie Hammer and Jessie Grouper. Basically neck and neck if this were a race.
Good execution there by Maggie Hammer.
Grouper on that first half dome volume. That signifies the beginning of the really difficult portion of this route. And then things only get tougher for him from here.
Yeah, this position is somewhat comfortable for Jessie, but then he's going to need to move quick back into that pocket position. Now he is one of the competitors who could top this route, because we would love to see the end of this route.
Definitely want to see the bat hang. Shawn Bailey successfully pulled that off, and Maggie Hammer is off the wall, and that will be the end of the women's qualifying round of the sport competition. Now everything will be tabulated, and we will determine the top 20 athletes out of this field of 74 who will move on to the semifinals.
Another knee bar there for Jessie Grouper. Gonna switch it, thinking of switching it to a toe hook. A little indecisive here.
We've seen a lot of climbers take a while to try and figure this thing out.
It's not the most comfortable of positions. I've also noticed that that toe hook isn't very secure, so it's hard to want to keep moving. Nice wrap with that right hand to make the toe hook more secure, get him in that position to clip. It's a pretty solid position now to start setting up for those powerful moves before the fun part.
Grouper navigating his way around and over that horizontal volume that has ended a lot of men's ascents. And he is still alive.
One of the powerful moves to that crimp, able to stick it. Now this is that dead point move where you really need to be accurate to get into that pocket. If he can stick it, he should be able to get through that next section. Really nicely done by Jessie Grouper.
Grouper approaching the final stages, and now it's time to get inverted and pull off that bat hang. And there it is.
Getting his toes up there. He's got to trust him to get to those jug finish holds.
Jessie Grouper close to topping Route B.
Taking a moment to chalk even.
Got to work a hand onto one of those holes in the pink box. He's got his left hand there, and now right hand to match. And the clip, and that'll do it. Jessie Grouper will top Route B. Unfortunately, he timed out, but that was still exciting to watch. We've been wanting to see that bat hang. He didn't get it pulled off inside the 6 minutes, but it was nice of him to show everyone at home exactly what we were talking about. Impressive effort from Jessie Grouper.
Yes, we are all thankful for Jessie Grouper sticking it out there, and showing us that awesome bat hang. Had to campus there, moving without his feet from one small hold to the next small hold, get his toes up above him, hang like a bat, and then figure out how to get his hands up there in order to secure the finish holds and then make the clip.
I can't imagine what's going through your head other than a lot of blood at this point when you're hanging upside down at nearly 62 feet off the ground. I know they know they're secure and they're going to be safe if they fall, but still, that's got to be nerve-wracking.
I mean, I've never done a bat hang that high, and honestly, it looks like a lot of fun, so I'm sure he had a great time.
And Jesse Grouper in the final clip won't count as a top officially, but he does put on a show for the crowd. More qualifying from Alexandria after this. Here are your 20 women who will be advancing to the semifinals, led by Ashima Sireesha and Brooke Rabitou. Margot Hayes, that's great news for her as far as the standings that get you to the U.S. overall national team are concerned. Natalia Grossman is one of the women trying to make it onto that squad. She is 10th. Maggie Hammer, we saw her go. She finishes in 13th. And Mariel Hortzman is your 20th and final qualifier. And now the men continuing to work through their ranks as we get closer to the end of their qualifying round.
Timothy King making his way up this men's Route B, starting to get into the more difficult section. Moves nicely to that fin hold that has a hold screwed on, gets the hold perfectly, finds the knee bar to take off some of that pressure on the arms, get a good shake in there.
Timothy Kang is joined by Keith North on the wall. North is on Route A. That's Timothy Kang, who's on Route B. Before we left you, we saw Jesse Grouper get to the top of this route, but it did not count because he didn't do it inside of the 6 minutes. But there's a look at what Timothy Kang did on his first climb up Route A, 21.56 out of a possible 46.13 points.
Timothy finding a good rhythm as he approaches this tenuous section.
Counting these two, only 18 men are left in this field of 92.
Good clipping position. Quick rest before it gets a little more intense.
Keith North is on the bottom left of your screen, trying to negotiate his way through this portion of the route. Meanwhile, Timothy Kang now onto that horizontal volume that has stopped a ton of climbers in the field. Ooh. And Keith North is off of Route A.
Seen a lot of big falls here. Timothy finding a nice rest with the knee bar there before he gets into that last of the half spheres before he gets into the quarter spheres.
We might get to see yet another bat hang.
He is moving pretty quickly too, so I don't think time will be as much of an issue.
Timothy Kang clearing the first really big challenge on this route.
Oh.
And as he reaches with his left hand, he's off the wall, but that's still a really solid climb for him on Route B. And that should help his cause as far as staying alive in the competition is concerned.
Tried to move there and his heel actually slipped right after he clipped. He tried to move and it just kind of popped off. He probably could feel himself slipping actually as he was moving into the clip and was just trying to
get as many points as possible. Remember, at your stopping point, if you make forward progress to the next handhold, you get 0.3 added to your score. If you actually make contact with usable surface, you get 0.5, and then you get 0.01 for every clip that you successfully clipped your lead into. Nathaniel Surma is now making his ascent up Route A. Remember, the women are done with their qualifying. We already know the top 20 who will be advancing to the semifinals for them. Now we are putting the finishing touches on the qualifying for the men.
He was able to bypass that Gaston move there, but then having to come back down and match hands to get back in sequence. You can skip as many holds as you would like. It's just maybe not always the best decision, but if it makes sense, then you can do it, which is a really nice way to keep it to where people can figure out their own way to do stuff.
You can skip holds, but you cannot skip clips.
True. You must clip all of the clips.
Safety first.
It's in that comfortable resting position now. Nathaniel Surma gets ready to get into some of that technical climbing. Oof, a little slip there, but able to save it.
Dom Speranza, meanwhile, is on Route B.
Nice knee bar off screen, now on screen from Dom Speranza. It's been interesting. Some people choose not to take a moment there, but when you see a hold like that, it's usually a better idea to just take a second to regroup.
Speranza so far has looked pretty solid in the opening stages of his ascent. And next to him, Nathaniel Surma, continuing to work his way up Route A.
Dom moving smart and quickly through that section. Not really any place to hesitate. Gonna keep moving. Nice shake before setting up for this difficult section of the route.
29.58 out of a possible 46.13 points on Route A. He has some work to do here on Route B.
And we've been seeing more and more men get higher on this route, which means it's just more important that when you're on the wall, you do as well.
Moving at a pretty good clip so far. We'll see if this first big crux of the route manages to slow him down.
Foot is not in the best place. Oh, really nice bumping there on that volume. If he can get into that pocket, put him in a good position to just take a breather for a sec. Oh,
and just didn't look like he had a solid foot placement, and he is off the wall, but that may be enough to get him into the top 20. And now Nathaniel Surma is also off the wall. So both of those men will now just sit and wait. Final stages of men's qualifying continues when we return to the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Day one almost done here in Alexandria, Virginia. Here's what's on tap for tomorrow on ESPN3. We get started at 9 a.m. Eastern time with the sport climbing semifinal. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern, both the sport and speed finals being contested between 8 athletes in each competition. Should be exciting, especially late in the day when we get down to those final athletes and some very valuable points in those national team standings up for grabs. Maddie Hong is on the left, and he had a very solid start to his qualifying round, topping Route A for a perfect score of 50.12.
Yeah, really exciting to see Maddie doing well again. He came to Bouldering Nationals this year without having competed in a competition in quite a few years, and he is a good boulderer, but sport climbing is where he really excels, and he's won this competition before in the past, so it's nice to see him looking in form already today and starting out the weekend in a good spot.
Only 2 other men have topped Route A. That was Shawn Bailey, it seems like a day ago, in this qualifying round, and then Drew Ruana followed that, as he is the second man to top it. Maddie Hong now looking to become the third. Andrew Nimmer is the other man on the wall right now over on Route B.
Maddie's taking a moment here to prepare for that steeper section on this route. Really kind of have to punch through these next 8 to 10 moves before getting to that better pinch hold where you can kind of relax for a second before the head wall. Always a good idea to break sport climbs up into sections. Make sure you have the right speed in necessary sections and take the time to rest or go slower in other sections.
And earlier we talked to Chief Route Setter Ryan Sewell, who's responsible for these layouts, and he basically told us as much. You know, he tried to divide these up into sections that increase in difficulty as you worked your way up the wall, and so far it seems like his mission has been accomplished.
Yeah, the setting has definitely turned out to be really good so far in this round. I think the separation has worked out nicely, which is always what they're looking for. They want people to complete the routes, but they don't want everybody to. They don't want it to come down to ties or it just being too easy, and they definitely don't want people to not finish at all. So I think it's been a really good mix this weekend, or the start of this weekend. We're just beginning. So it's exciting to see what the next few rounds hold for us.
Maddie Hong trying to go 2 for 2 as far as tops are concerned in this qualifying round. And Andrew Nimmer has reached that first big crux on Route B.
Yeah, Andrew Nimmer's setting up to do those couple moves before he can get into that pocket and then have to maneuver his way through that cylinder looking volume. Maddie's about to get ready to do that more tensiony move where he needs to make sure he can stay as close to the ball as possible and flip that right hand on the pinch to continue upward on the head wall. They are, ooh.
Now Nimmer is done, as once again that crux stops another climber, leaving Maddie Hong all by himself and getting closer to the top. It's that black pyramid looking volume that's outlined in pink. That's where he's got to get to. Well, he needs to secure one hand and then clip himself in to complete the climb.
Looking really good here as he approaches that final hold before the finish hold. It is a blocked hold. As you can see, he can only get a little bit of his finger.
And now a slip, and Hong can't recover. But he did top Route B, nearly gets to the top of Route A, and should get himself into the semifinals.
He was looking so good there, and he just had a minor slip. Trying to wedge his fingers in there. His left foot slipped. Almost being able to find the balance to save it, but it's a little too much of a bobble. But all around good climbing for Maddie Hong today, so we should be seeing him tomorrow.
Only 12 men remain in this initial qualifying round. 92 men began the competition. Only 20 will advance, and Maddie Hong will be one of them, nearly becoming the third man to top Route A. Not just confirming his score with his judge. because again, you get partial points can be awarded at the point where you come off the wall. And the question is now whether that is going to be, for Hong, going to mean that he got positive momentum or if he actually got his hand on usable space. The difference is 0.2 points, but that can make a difference. But Matty Hong nearly got to the top of Route A after topping Route B. So he is relatively safe.
And definitely in a good spot for semifinals.
Hogan Wilder, meanwhile, only 16.35 out of a possible 46.13 points in his first climb on Route A. So he's basically got to get to the top of this thing to have a chance of getting in to the semifinals.
Like Ryan Sewell was saying earlier when he was in the booth with us, he's the chief route setter. They try to set the routes to where they focus on different skills. So there is a possibility that you could really mess up on one route, but then do really well on the other. And it's always nice that that is a possibility, because sometimes people are just really good at one thing versus as well-rounded. It's in that nice knee bar section right now. Hogan Wilder taking a moment to take that stress off his arms and kind of set himself up for that next section of climbing.
On the left of your screen is Mercati Sanders on Route A. Again, the women are all done. And we do know the 20 female climbers who will be moving on to the semifinals tomorrow. Now we're just trying to determine that for the men.
Mercati setting up to get into this technical section, trying to figure out how to rock up onto those volumes. One of our shorter competitors, not the shortest male competitor, but definitely, he's probably the second shortest, honestly, because Colin Duffy is 5 feet.
But in certain situations, that can be an advantage.
Yes, it can be an advantage sometimes, for sure.
Hogan Wilder, meanwhile, is off the wall. As it doesn't look like he's done enough to get himself into the semifinals. Mercati Sanders, meanwhile, is trying to get there himself. About a third of the way through his climb of Route A. Up that 62-foot wall. Only 2 men have topped this route, Shawn Bailey and Drew Ruana.
You notice a little bit more of a relaxation right after Mercati clipped, because when he was in that position before, he hadn't clipped yet. So a fall there would be kind of big, and you're on that more vertical angle, and nobody wants to fall on a vertical angle generally. So that moment after you clip, you can kind of relax for a second, because though you're still in it with the climb, you know you're in a safer position to keep moving.
Mercati with a very deliberate pace so far on this route.
Next move's going to be a bit of a little jump for him. Oh, actually, I take it back. He used the high foot, which is really smart. Going to keep moving his feet up to get into that pocket.
Now adding another clip.
If he can get past this next part and get up into that pinch, he'll be in a good position to where he can kind of recover a little before that head wall. Really nice execution getting into the pocket there. He needs to clip before he can keep going.
Struggling with his grip, but now he is off. Mercati Sanders off the wall. It's a handful of men left. We wrap things up here in Alexandria. Only 10 men remain as we close out the qualifying round of the sport competition here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. And that is Raymond Hansen, 26.57 points out of a possible 46.13 on Route A.
Raymond's in a nice position right now to take a few rests before he gets into this powerful section that doesn't let up too much. There is a knee bar where you can rest by taking the weight off your arms and wedging your knee into the volumes, but depends on whether or not it fits you properly and whether you want to take that time.
Raymond has that first really big crux of this route in his sights.
Makes his way onto that fin hold nicely. Set up for the clip. Doesn't look like he's going to use the knee bar. Going to just keep moving.
Now we will see how he handles the first really big challenge on this route.
Oh.
And Raymond's grip cannot hold, and he is off.
He reached over onto that volume with his right hand and actually ended up just under the hold. So he was grabbing onto basically nothing, making it difficult to stay on the wall at that point.
Thomas Pitzel is on Route A, 31.08 out of a possible 50.12 points on Route B.
Thomas seems to be in a good rhythm here. Getting close to that section where he can almost relax. Just needs to get through a few more holds to get to that better pinch hold. Take a moment. Does need to clip. Looks like he's a little tired. Unsure of what to do.
And that's going to be it for Pitzel, as he may have just been going for those additional fractional points instead of clipping in. Only 2 men remain on Route B, and just 6 now are left on Route A. As Pitzel's day is done. Next 2 men up will be Devin Wong. He'll be on Route A, and Jonathan Mark in the blue shirt getting set to climb Route B. This is an open national championship, meaning basically anybody can sign up for it. And we had 92 men enter. That's why day 1 has been a long day for the people here at the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia.
One good thing about the format today, though, is that since it is flash format, the competitors don't have an isolation, so there's no check-in time. Whereas if this was the bouldering event and they had to be in ISO for 6 or 7 hours, that would be pretty awful. But here at least they can figure out when they need to be at the gym, and they can leave if they need to and then come back. It's not as confined.
But that does change as we move on into the competition, correct?
Correct. Semifinals and finals are on-type format, so the competitors will have isolation. They'll have a check-in time and a closing time. If they miss that time, they cannot compete.
Devin Wong on the left of your screen, just getting started on Route A.
Nice execution from Devin on that barn door move. Held it nicely. He's done well in the past in sport climbing and bouldering in the youth, or on the youth circuit, and done pretty well in some of the adult competitions as well. Really good sport climber.
Jonathan Mark on the right is nearly slipped from where he was, but was able to keep his grip and can't do it on that time. Now 1 man remains on Route B, and that's Gabriel Galen. Now Devin Wong.
Getting into that nice section. Nice technical section, needs to get up on, oh.
And Wong slips. So after a really good run on Route B, Route A proves to be more of a challenge for him. Back with the final qualifiers when we come back. Day one of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships coming to a close as Gabriel Galen, the final man to take on Route B in this qualifying round for the sport competition. 28.58 out of a possible 46.13 points on Route A.
Looks to be in a pretty good rhythm, minus that little foot slip that he recovered from nicely. As he makes his way into that resting position. Has a chance to take a moment and reset.
Alex Fritz at the bottom of your screen has just started his climb up Route A. As counting these two, only 6 men remain in the qualifying round.
Both athletes out of vertical world. Alex Fritz actually coaches there as well. Alex getting ready to get to that good hold where he can rest for a second before getting into the technical footwork section before the steep part of the wall.
Made his way close to the top on Route B, 45.41 out of the possible 50.12. Alex Fritz, barring a disaster here, looking good as far as a spot in the semifinals is concerned.
Really good save there from Alex Fritz. Had his right foot on as his left foot was popping off, using a lot of body tension there to stay on. If you would have seen my face, my jaw was open.
Fritz still alive. And Gabriel Galen, meanwhile, is on that first major crux of Route B.
Gabriel's going to need to get through these next couple moves pretty quickly to conserve energy before the more demanding part of the route. Nicely into that pocket.
And a slip from Galen, and he is off. And that will do it for the men on Route B.
Alex Fritz in that more comfortable position now on top of that volume where he can take a couple moments to rest before setting up for the steep part. Such a committing move there into that volume where you have to press your palm into it before flipping and then getting that little jib hold that is on top of the volume. Quick shake on his way to that spear hold.
Fritz is close to the halfway point on this climb. Only 2 men have gotten to the top.
2 of his former teammates.
Shawn Bailey and Drew Ruano, the only 2 men to get to the top of Route A.
Just a couple holds away from that more secure position. That large pinch hold. Once he gets there, he can take a breather. Nice moment of relief there. Set up for this next delicate section.
Fritz securing another clip. Now getting to the final portion of this route.
His right heel is on that volume to take a little weight off before he keeps moving now with the toe.
with every handhold he secures, he tightens a grip on a spot in the qualifying round as he's inside 2 minutes of his 6-minute window for this climb.
Needs to flip that hand. Ooh, so smart with that heel hook to make the flip a little more secure.
And then reaching with his left hand, just can't secure the hold, but should secure a spot in the semifinals after 2 really good climbs up routes A and B. Colin Duffy will be up next, as now just 4 men remain as Alex Fritz leaves the competition floor.
Just taking one last look at the climb. It's definitely hard as a competitor not to replay things that happen in your head, but every round of competition is a new day, so you just gotta let it go.
Colin Duffy, just 15 years old. Several 15-year-olds competing in this competition, but he certainly looks like he's on the early side of that 15 years. Just 5 feet tall from Broomfield, Colorado.
He's done a great job over the years learning to adapt with his height. He's always been little for his age group in the youth competitions, and I think having dealt with that for so many years, coming into these open competitions, this being the first year he's really old enough to do them, has set him up nicely to just adapt to whatever the route setters are throwing at him, which, you know, not everybody, if they have those moments where they're kind of on the shorter end, and it doesn't always last forever, so he's definitely figured out a way to make it work for him.
Age certainly wasn't a factor for Duffy in his climb up Route B as he got to the top of it, a perfect score of 50.12 points.
Really nice execution on that move. The Gaston with the left hand, a little barn door that didn't cause him any issues. Using that foothold out left to set him up to get into the handhold. So grabbing extra holds like that, if they're not scored, they don't get you any points, but you can use feet for hands if you need to. Nicely into that first rest on the route. See if he ends up clipping here.
And Colin Duffy, as far as the U.S. overall national team is concerned, is in the hunt. He is 6th overall. That was coming into the weekend, but he has a ton of points to make up on Drew Ruana in order to leapfrog him for that 4th and final spot. But just the fact that he is on this list and in contention is pretty incredible for a 15-year-old climber.
And on top of that, he didn't even do bouldering nationals. So that's all just coming from the combined invitational. So it's a really nice start to his open competition career.
Colin Duffy has a bright future ahead of him in this sport. As at just 15 years old, he's already been able to accomplish quite a bit.
See if he takes a moment here to kind of relax before getting into the steeper section.
And the good thing is next year he actually might be able to drive himself to some of these competitions.
Nice movement there into that press, which is quite a press for him. Trying to figure out how to hold this volume in order to set up for the clip. Moving pretty quickly through this steep section.
Duffy trying to become the 3rd man to top this route as he got to the top of Route B earlier in the day.
Setting himself up nicely already to really hopefully getting a spot into the semifinal.
And Colin Duffy will turn 16 in December. You got to be 16 years old in order to compete in the World Cup season by the end of that year, and he just squeaks in.
Yeah, so definitely even on the younger side, just of all of the 15-year-olds that are competing. This next section, this move out left, is going to be a little spanny for him probably, but I have no doubt that he'll be able to figure out a way to make it work for him. Just going to be a little quicker flip. Nice. Look at that ankle flexibility on his left foot.
When you're 15 years old, you can pull stuff off like that on a consistent basis. And Duffy is now reaching the part where we've seen quite a few athletes stumble and getting closer to being perfect in qualifying and getting to the top of Route A.
Looks like he's trying to give Sean Bailey a bit of a run here.
And Drew Ruana also getting to the top. And Colin Duffy has looked very impressive during this ascent.
Needs to get his fingers in there a little bit more. Figure out how to get that foot up.
Bailey and Ruana have topped this route, but only Bailey has topped them both. And Duffy looking to match him, and he won't be able to do it. But Colin Duffy will get himself into the semifinals. As now just 3 men remain to tackle Route A. One more look at the final moments for Duffy on Route A.
He's a little spanned out there trying to figure out how he can hop his foot up with his left foot so low. He went for it, but wasn't able to get it all the way up there without slipping. It's kind of a high kick for him there. Really good climbing from Colin Duffy today, executing perfectly on both routes to the best of his ability.
Impressive work from the 15-year-old.
Excited to see what he does tomorrow.
And we will be seeing him tomorrow in the semifinals as he confirms his score with his judge. Nathaniel Coleman will be coming up next, and he is almost a full foot taller than Colin Duffy. And Nathaniel Coleman, at 22 years old, out of Murray, Utah, came into the weekend in second place in the overall standings for the United States national team with an even 400 points. You get those points based on where you finish in these events. So he has quite a cushion between himself and 5th place Matt Fultz. Remember, the top 4 get in, and Zach Galla has already clinched courtesy of his win at the Invitational, the combined Invitational that was held in Salt Lake City back in January.
Nathaniel Coleman climbed pretty well on his first route, so if he can keep it up on this one, there's a good chance we'll see him in the semifinal tomorrow. And he made finals last year in this discipline, so.
And got close to the top of Route B.
Yeah, definitely potential to see him in the next couple of rounds.
Coleman also had a very impressive performance at the Bouldering Open National Championship in Bend, Oregon back in February.
Yeah, he's had impressive bouldering nationals the past few years. First time he's been beat in a while, so. But still nearly perfect.
Yeah, really solid result earlier in the day, even though he did not make the finals of the speed competition that will be contested tomorrow night. He did finish 12th. And that will add 56 points to his 400-point total in the standings for the U.S. overall national team.
Approaching this technical footwork section, one of the taller competitors, so we've seen a few of them get a little bit bunched up here. they're able to get out of it, but you see he's using all of his flexibility there to get in a comfortable position to stand up.
Now, Coleman was second in the combined invitational and then second again in the Bouldering Open National Championship. And remember, just getting on the U.S. overall national team does not guarantee you a spot at the Summer Games, but you can't get to the Summer Games without getting on that team first.
Exactly. You have to be on the team to then be able to compete on the World Cup circuit, where you're trying to do well in order to get enough points to then hopefully get to compete at World Championships, which is the first place where people will actually be selected for the Olympics.
And only at most 2 men and 2 women will go to the Olympics.
Yeah, it's a very small number. I know that's something that's hoping to change in the future for climbing in the Olympics, hoping to get more medals in there in the future.
And the 3 disciplines will not be contested separately. So bouldering, speed, and sport, you don't get separate medals for those competitions. It's all combined into one.
Yep, all 1 medal.
And that's why it's important to have athletes like Nathaniel Coleman, who is so well-rounded.
Exactly, he's in a really good position to be one of those athletes that has a possibility of being in Tokyo. Getting ready to get out of this steep section. It's in a good rhythm. Nicely into that good pinch hold. It is a good hold, but you can't rest too long here because the feet are not really there. There's no feet on the left side, so you're kind of just on like 1 hand and 1 foot. So you've seen the men take a second, but then they kind of keep going.
And again, there is no tension on that rope. It's not like they can rest once they clip in. That's just for safety purposes only.
Exactly. It's not helping them in any way.
Coleman looking to move to the final stage of this climb as we close out the first day of competition here in Alexandria, Virginia. Day 2 starts tomorrow. We're on the air at 9 a.m. Eastern time with the sport semifinal round.
Really nice hand flip.
And that will be on ESPN3.
Trying to set up to go left hand to that crimp hold that is blocked, so only a portion of that hold is actually usable. That's why it makes it kind of precarious right here. It gives the men more possibility to slip. Looks really good going into this volume. Seems to hold the tension to turn.
Only 2 men have topped this route. Ooh, near slip for Coleman, but he's able to recover.
Really nice recovery. Just to figure out how he can get into that final hold. Nice foot matching, getting that foot up. It's a high foot. Needs to pull and rock over.
And just won't be able to make the transition. But solid effort from Coleman. And he flirted with a fall, was able to save it, but then ultimately couldn't hang on.
Yeah, really nice save here by Nathaniel. Luckily, just as his left foot popped, his right foot actually landed on the hold. Had to get his foot really high, started to rock up, and kind of just lost that balance point there as he was trying to go to that final volume, pushed him out too much, and unfortunately fell right before the finish, but great climbing.
Just 2 climbers remain, and we will have them for you when we return to the Sport Rock Climbing Centers in Alexandria, Virginia. Only 2 climbers remain here in the qualifying round for the sport competition at the 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships. Nathan Hadley, 35.09 out of a possible 50.12 points on Route B. Looking to work his way into the top 20 and on to the semifinals.
Already in quite a good flow here. Confident movement at the beginning. That's another thing, the way the routes are set, it's really easy to become hesitant, but the more confident you are, the more likely you are to get through those difficult sections, and you'll see some of the climbers will hesitate and the fall becomes inevitable. Moving nicely through this technical section.
The order the climbers got to the wall was determined by a random draw.
Yeah, so unlike Bouldering Nationals, there is no ranking involved in this competition to go into the qualification round. But once this qualification round is decided, semifinals is based on that top 20 rank. Ethan taking a moment to weight his feet before he has to be using so much of his power in his arms to get through this next steep section. Drop the rope there for a second.
Now he will get the clip. Every clip adds 0.01 to your score. Every handhold that's designated on the route is worth a point, sometimes two, depending on if it requires you to get both hands on it. The higher you go, the more points you get.
Nice movement into these semi-sloping holds on the volume. Really controlled move to that pocket. We've seen some of the men dead point a little more or move somewhat dynamically with having to aim to that smaller surface area. Nicely into the more comfortable pinch hold.
Once he works his way around that ledge, he will be in the final stages of this climb.
It's getting set up nicely to try and get into that difficult section. Does need to clip. This rope's on the left side of him, so that might be a little tricky. He's gonna have to move. Nice.
Able to work that problem out, get clipped in.
You know, that is a whole nother part of it. When the climbers are reading the route, they have to figure out what they're gonna do, but they also need to know where they're gonna clip from, which side the rope is gonna be on, just so that they don't run into any issues trying to deal with the rope, because that just takes more energy. It's a very tensiony move that's going on. Actually, it'd be good for him to drop his foot a little, because the rope is kind of creating a bit of slack underneath his foot.
And he will not be able to hang on as he actually retreated a little bit to maybe find a better hold. And now just one man remains to take on Route A before we close out the qualifying round of the 2019 USA Climbing Sport Open National Championship. And that will be Bryce Belshon, who has been waiting quite a while to get himself back on the wall. One more look at Hadley's slip.
Just couldn't figure out the tension there. He had his heel in, and we've seen a lot of the men flip that heel to a toe to reach out. Because the heel, though it's comfortable, keeps you from actually reaching left. It kind of pulls your body back into that right direction.
Hadley untying, and we'll turn things over to that man, Bryce Belshon, who's getting one final read on the route.
One of the great things about the climbing community, everyone is so supportive, even though they're all competing against each other. There's a serious case of camaraderie within climbing, and it's always been that way. And you know, it's been that way from the start, based on climbing with outdoors and then turning into competitive indoors, and it's nice that that part has never changed.
Belshon waiting for the judge to confirm the score with Nathan Hadley. Belshon is watching that discussion.
He's probably been ready to climb for a little bit, so he's run the route through his head a bit. It's just ready to get on the wall.
We have just hit 10 p.m. Eastern here in Alexandria, Virginia. Most of the crowd that was here earlier has cleared out as they're getting ready for day two, but this man still has some work left. 25.37 out of a possible 50.12 points on Route B.
Nice control of the swing there on that barn door move. Needs to go with his right hand to those next two holds. See the two little screws in them, so we call them screw-on holds.
Electing to clip in before he makes that move.
There he goes. Trying to figure out if he flips his left hand under and turns it into an undercling, he could get into it better. He could possibly match his hands there. It's just not the way that most people are doing it. Could very well work as it is right now. Just a little extra time that you don't really want to waste.
Just 6 minutes for Belshon on the wall, and he gets hung up a little early trying to figure out this part of the route.
Nice move into the pocket. I said earlier, the pocket looks like it's really good, but it's not as deep as it should be because the route setters blocked it with one of those smaller footholds that we call jibs to make it to where they couldn't get as deep into the pocket.
And very often on these routes are only hanging on with a couple fingers, as was the case with that last hold.
Nice moment to relax there for Bryce before he gets into this technical section. I've seen a couple people have a bit of a hard time swinging the foot out there. You kind of have to really commit to it. Nicely done.
Belshon, although he is successful right now, has been taking quite a bit of time here in the early stages of this climb.
That lower section is a little more technical, so it makes sense to take a bit more time if you don't read it exactly right, but he could make up time on the steeper section just because it's a little more straightforward.
More than 2.5 minutes into his 6-minute window right now.
Couple of nice shakes. One thing that's really easy when you're climbing to do is to accidentally hold your breath. It's sometimes hard to remember to breathe in those very tenuous situations where you're trying so hard. So when you get to a place like this, it's nice to make sure you can catch your breath, reset.
Inside 3 minutes now for Bryce Belshon. He's closing out the first third of this route and has yet to really hit the really tough portions of this climb.
Trying to make that clip while he's in the press.
Now just 2 minutes left for Belshon.
Should definitely pick up the pace. Needs to get into that Gaston with his left hand. Cross into the pocket. Should try to find a good rhythm here to keep moving. Looks a little bit pumped as he tries to fight through that clip. Really fighting, see if he can get to that next hold.
Now 90 seconds remain, and Belshon is off, and qualifying is done. We will be back with the 20 men moving on to the semifinals after this. The 2019 USA Climbing Sport and Speed Open National Championships are brought to you by The North Face, inspiring and enabling exploration since 1966. Day one of competition is at an end as we are still calculating the overall standings for the men here in the opening round of qualifying, as just 20 will move on, but we expect to see the usual suspects in that group.
Yeah, there was a great round of competition today. Not too many surprises. A lot of the men that we expect to be in that top end of the competition were kind of there, which is always nice because, you know, these athletes work so hard and they train so much, so to have crazy slips happen, which can happen, is always devastating. So it's nice to see that a lot of them were able to perform the way they should. And it'll be interesting to see who was able to kind of sneak in there too.
And for those people who might not know how these competitions go, what changes tomorrow in the semifinals?
So different from today, the semifinals will have one route. It'll be the on-site format, which means the competitors will go into isolation. They will come out as a group and get a preview time so that they can sit there and look at the route, only being able to touch the start holds and no other hold. And then after their preview time is done, they'll go back into isolation and they'll have to climb without watching anybody.
And we have the 20 men who will be advancing to the semifinals tomorrow. Shawn Bailey leading the way as he tops both routes. Colin Duffy, the 15-year-old, is second, followed by Drew Ruana and Maddie Hong. 11 through 20. Hobbs, Kessler, and Matt Fultz. Important for Matt Fultz as he stays alive for a possible spot on that U.S. overall national team. Zach Galla, who's already qualified for that team, finishes in 14th. And it's Josh Levin, who is the 20th and final man into the semifinal field. Busy day on day one of competition here in Alexandria, Virginia. For Meagan Martin, I'm Shawn Woodland saying so long. Our coverage continues tomorrow on ESPN3, 9 a.m. for the semifinals of the sport competition, and then 5 p.m. Eastern for the finals of sport and speed. All games airing on the ESPN networks are streaming live and archived on the ESPN app. This has been a presentation of ESPN.